What made you realize your significant other wasn't the one? And she said that I was too selfish of a person. This is less a representation of who I am and more of who she is. She was a PhD student in special education, and her goal was to travel to war-torn countries and teach English to children with disabilities there. I designed medical devices in the air-conditioned office, so to her, I wasn't willing to personally sacrifice enough to help others. She's a wonderful person, but I realized that I could never live up to her standards of altruism. That's not fair. Story 2. My dad passed away in 2000, and a friend of mine brought over a tray of food to my family. We were friends, but not close enough to where we knew each other's phone numbers or addresses. It was a complete surprise to see her. She just heard about it and looked for something to do to help. Months later, I realized it was something my girlfriend would never do. I started dating the food tray girl about 15 months later and married her. Congratulations. Story 3. She didn't want the one, just a one. Like, kind of strict timeline. She broke up with me as soon as I signed a 1-year lease on an apartment because that would mean we wouldn't move in together for at least a year. She has to be engaged by February of 2018, and that just won't work out. She needs to be married by September of next year, and I just messed up her timetable. She was 20 years old, and we've been dating for 3 months. Yeah, I had no idea about her plans, so good luck. What is that girl on? Story 4. When we met, we were both very, very not having children. Back then, it was one of my vetting issues. I did not want to start any kind of relationship if the woman wanted kids because there was no freaking way I was going to have kids. 2 months after we started dating, she gave me the following list of demands. I was to quit my very nice paying job to get a better, much higher paying job. I was to buy her a house in Connecticut. We were living in the New York area at the time, but not together. Preferably Darien. We were to get married immediately, if not sooner. And she wanted to get immediately pregnant with the first of 10, yes, 10 children she wanted by me. The first time she told me this, I thought she was joking. No. The 50 times she said it after that made me realize that she was 100% serious. This was the mid-90s, and it ghosted so hard I moved from New York to Arizona overnight without telling her. We're friends again now, as in Facebook friends, and she met and married another guy. No kids, though. Has been happy for the last 21 years. But talk about whiplash. Story 5. The realization was painful and gradual, mostly owing to his inability to have reasonable discussions, refusal to respect my perspective, and nonstop grudge holding. But the last straw for me was when he broke one of my possessions. Thankfully, something small or cheap, in a fit of rage. I knew I couldn't spend the rest of my life with something like that. Left, soon after. Also, I was scared of him. Never felt that way about an SO before. Yeah, you definitely dodged a bullet. Story 6. We met online just before or as we were both leaving long-term relationships. We had many similar interests. We both needed someone to lean on and were already predisposed to fast connections. Seemed great. Ideal. A bunch of other positive adjectives and such. I suddenly needed to get away from where I was, and we talked about me moving halfway across the country. And we, mostly her, she's brilliant, made it happen. Problem was, we had no physical chemistry in person. We were a much better match as friends. Took a few months for that to really sink in. As it did, other things came up. She was smarter with a way better memory. She approached the world very differently from me, and gradually, things became strained as all the little things added up. So, we broke up. Both of us have avoidant personalities, so we lost touch as friends very rapidly. I'm happier when I move and she's met someone who's a better match for her. For a brief while, we were what the other needed, and I appreciate that, but I still miss my friend. Story 7. I one day randomly snapped out of my depression, saw how crappy my life was with him, broke off our engagement, moved back to my grandmother's, committed myself to a psych ward 2 weeks later. But there's much more of a backstory to the last part. But my ex is a man-child. Broke as heck and has no control over his life because his life is controlled by his mother. I had him over to play MTG last week, and he's like, "You live in a crappy apartment." The only thing I could respond to him with was, "I'd like to see what you can afford and what you make. And at least I still don't live with my mother." Oh my God, sick burn, call an ambulance. Story 8. Being married now, I see what made all the others not work. I was too absorbed in having the same common interests. That will sustain you for a while. You learn to grow together and become comfortable with each other. Heck, you might even fall in love with each other. But then it hit this wall where one of us didn't want to move forward. With my now wife, everything felt right. I never had to question anything. I thought I might even have one of those, "oh crap, do I really want to get married or marry this person" moments? But it never came. I was absolutely certain she was the one for me. I feel the same way about having our first kid together. Due at the end of this year. There is stress, but no worrying. Story 9. I'm married now, but with my ex-boyfriend, I realized I couldn't stay with him because while I couldn't put my finger on why, I knew that I didn't want my family or friends to meet him. He had no real redeeming values and was emotionally cruel. It was easy to stay with him because of how isolated I was, but when my mom said she wanted to come visit from out of state, I was afraid and didn't want her to come. Eventually, I got out and started dating my husband a few months after that. Could not be happier and my family loves him. Story 10. We were at a party and he wanted to go home. As we were leaving, a girl said that she hopes I feel better. I said, not me, my husband. He grabbed me and gave me a look that scared me. We went to the car and he freaked out. Turns out they lied about me being ill so that this girl would see what a selfish wife I am. He told me that I wasted his life being married to me. I was so done. I asked him to leave. He packed a bag that night. I had a long relationship with that girl, his boss's wife. She played them against each other and left with both their cash. Now I'm happily remarried and he's still picking up pieces 6 years later. I don't want bad things for him, but after his second DUI, I don't have any sympathy left. He got what he deserved. Well, that's another bullet dodged. Story 11. My 2 exes from college. Number 1, absolutely freaking crazy. Just a breakdown a minute. Can break things off with her ex. Bounced between 2 to 3 guys. Just a spastic person in general. Still, this is way like 8 years later. Number 2, didn't want to label us as dating, took advantage of my willingness to take her out to nice places and such, despite little money, bragged about using me later on. Then when she talked about how she was asexual to a friend, in front of me as well, and how she didn't need a boyfriend or anything, all the while telling me she wanted to be my girlfriend and liked dating, I was out. She's still the only person I absolutely hate. Story 12. She dumped me on my 21st birthday and proceeded to go wild at college over the next month, whistling someone on the swim team, fooling with some random frat guy and falling in love with a dealer who gave her synthetic crap, which led to her going to the hospital. We were together for about 1/3 of my life, but her new college friends convinced her I wasn't worth it anymore and that she should be having fun with the new guys. She quickly realized I was better than the casual fling she went with, but by then, it was too late. She messed me up horribly ever since, and I can't really let my walls down for anyone anymore. Definitely had a hard time, even forgiving her. Story 13. We were married for about 4 years. I caught on that she must have been putting on an act while we were dating because it seems like the moment we got hitched, her true form came out. I had to constantly tell her how rude or inconsiderate to other people she was. Started buying pills and using my health insurance to go to multiple doctors to get prescribed different crap, and I started witnessing her shoplifting when we were out. The final straw was that we went to my cousin's wedding, which had an open bar. She kept getting drinks and just leaving them on tables still full. Wasting drinks on purpose, and if it caught her in the act, I'd go pick it up and down it just so nobody else would notice. I would confront her about it, and she'd get mad and scream, "It's no big deal. They're free." Well, to us, yes. To my cousin, no. It's very disrespectful. Well, I ended up in the hospital later that night due to alcohol poisoning. A week later, when I finally recovered, I left her. You didn't find any other solution than to down all those drinks, man? Story 14. I still do not fully understand how or why or when, honestly. Everything was perfect. But then one day at work, I saw my coworker with a different eye. Not just physically, but I felt a genuine spiritual connection with her, and I do not believe in that stuff. At least I didn't, until now. Even though I work with her and cannot pursue my feelings, I am thankful for her shedding light onto my current relationship and making me see clearly. You'll never know how she helped save me. That is the hardest part to have to accept. Story 15. My ex made me feel like I was almost perfect for him. I was smart, but talked too much, so he criticized me. I was motivated, but I spent too much time in my research assistant job in undergrad, so he told me I was wasting my time. It was fun, but I smoked cigarettes occasionally, so he broke up with me, knowing he would get back together after I promised never to do those things again. I love my family, but my sister had previously struggled with substances, so he refused to spend time with my family and openly manipulated me to stop paying attention to them. I felt like I checked boxes on his list of a perfect woman, but I was too loud, too rowdy, and had my own priorities that he never respected. We'd started dating when we were in high school and kept it all through college. I really didn't like the feeling like there were so many bad parts about me. I mean, who would? Story 16. And I realized that I was lonely as his girlfriend because he just didn't care. Wasn't there. The best part of a relationship is to have that person who you open up to and share mutual care with. You're there for each other and talk through things together, always putting the relationship first. That wasn't the case in this relationship. Whenever I was hurt or upset, I felt like he couldn't care less. In fact, he would more likely distance himself from me when I needed him most. I was always lonely and disappointed, waiting and hoping for more love, openness, and affection, but it just didn't come. It was the hardest relationship to leave because we were so perfect for each other. I tried to give him everything, but it just wasn't reciprocated. I had to always remind myself why I needed to let go and find someone better. A few months after, I did. He is there for me. He loves me. He cares for me, and he doesn't walk away when things become tough. He steps up to the plate and works through them because the relationship and our commitment to each other are important to him. Gosh, I love that man. Story 17. I was young, foolish, and immature. We married because she gave me the attention I was seeking. You might say I married the first girl that looked in my direction. After several years of marriage and a few kids, I believe I've matured just enough to not need a constant stroking of my ego. I'm sure I have other issues, though. But I woke up one morning and realized that I'm with someone who I have absolutely nothing in common with. More or less doesn't like me as a person, can't hold an adult conversation with, and doesn't make me laugh, and has gone off the deep edge of religion. So I'm an evildoer to boot. God, I'm lonely. Story 18. Saw how much he hated himself and gradually came to accept the old truism that those who do not love themselves can't truly love another. This is so much truer than we like to believe, especially since so many people seem to hate themselves these days. It can be hard to just find someone with true self-love. Still, this constant always bears out in the end, and sure enough, that's the way we went for us too. It may feel like love at first, but once you get close enough, you and the relationship will be lumped right in with their self-loathing. Oh, for them, the fantasy's fun, for a little while, but should it ever become real, you'll never be able to compensate for the original sin of loving a wretch such as themselves. I hope you find someone who, for him, is worth the effort of personal growth and self-acceptance. No one can do it for you. And it is worth to try for yourself, if only so as not to hurt the people who care for you the most. Story 19. Broke up like 3 weeks ago. Her mood swings were huge. Because of these mood swings, we started to fight constantly about useless little things. The biggest problem is that it wasn't her fault, actually. She had some self issues. One of her parents passed away when she was young. She needed to work on, so I had to move on. The hardest thing is that I actually still love her a lot, but I just couldn't deal with all her struggles anymore. Story 20. Late to the party, but looking back, it was probably when we'd get into bed together and she'd literally just roll over and try to fall asleep. We didn't live together. We were long distance-ish and saw each other every other weekend on average. We started going out when we were teenagers, and over the course of our 6-year relationship, we went from 15 years old holding hands on the couch to sleeping over in separate rooms to sleeping in the same bed. We were so happy when our parents let us sleep in the same bed. They would stay up for hours after we went to bed, just talking and kissing and cuddling. I used to look forward to that hour or two just lying in bed so much, but then she started just rolling over and going to sleep after not seeing me for 2 weeks. Sometimes she wouldn't even give me a kiss when I got off the bus. Not out of malice, but because the passion just wasn't there for her anymore. I was still as stupidly in love with her at 22 as when I was 16. She wasn't. Story 21. Probably when I saw my ex respond to his sister needing help. He'd already tucked in bed when his sister came home after partying. No big deal. Then all of a sudden we hear the door open and a guy at the door. At this point I'm a tad concerned, but my boyfriend just lays there. Okay. Then at some point we hear her say, "No, you can't sleep in my bed. You're sleeping on the couch." At this point I'm wondering why my boyfriend hasn't checked on her, so I ask and he responds, "She is intoxicated. I'm afraid of angering her." For context, this girl doesn't have a drinking problem or anything. He just didn't want to step on her toes. At this point I tell him if he doesn't do something, I will. He freaks out. Says, "No, I'm pissed." He didn't seem to understand I was pissed at him and not her. So he says, no, I'll take care of it, and he grabs his phone and leaves the apartment building. Not the room, not the floor, the building. To call his mom, who lives in a different country. I just got fed up, asked her sister what was up. It turns out this guy was just too intoxicated to find one of the 30 Ubers he had requested. We shoved him in an Uber and he was on his way. I dated that guy for 4 years and loved him, but I couldn't have children with someone like him. I understand he doesn't want to hurt anyone, but sometimes hurting someone is worth if it stops them from getting hurt worse by something or someone else. Story 22. A lot of times when we argued, it would end up with him saying I wasn't satisfying him. Anything intimate that I did was never enough for him. I felt like he didn't appreciate what took me courage to send him. When he called me closed-minded for not thinking exactly how he does, when I felt bad that my sister was depressed and hurting herself, I told him about it and he said, "She'll get over it. It's no big deal." When I started to get feelings for someone else, I would feel happier seeing my friend's name on my phone instead of my boyfriend at the time. Oddly enough, after I broke up with my boyfriend, my feelings for my friend subsided. It can be the little signs that you might tell yourself, "No, it'll be fine," or "This is normal behavior," or "I'm used to it." It wasn't until now that I'm dating someone else that I realized I was with the wrong person. One thing that sucks about my previous relationship is that now I feel insecure about intimacy and if I'm enough for my new significant other. What I'm thankful for is that he reassures me it's okay and we'll get through it together. Story 23. Not my current significant other, but my ex. I knew she wasn't the one pretty early on simply because everything I did, or did not do, always caused her to have a big existential crisis, and it just got really hard on my morale, real quick. But she was hot, so I kept it going for 2 years. I just knew from month 3 that she wasn't the mother of my future kids. The breakup still sucked because I loved her regardless of how up and down the relationship was. Story 24. He moved away. I went to go visit him. Everything was okay, but when I got home, he sent me a message about how I will never see you again. We have no future together, and I'm ending it all at the end of the month. Then he ghosted me for like 3 months, came back, tried to fix things, despite him being insanely jealous and paranoid that I was fooling with other men, even though he told me he never wanted to see me again. He still thought it was my boyfriend that entire time. Stupid me took time off and spent hundreds of dollars to go visit him again, and when I got there, he wouldn't take any pictures with me and told me not to kiss him. I accused him of being ashamed of being with me, then he went full rage mode and told me that I was texting other people behind his back. Oh, you just hurt his ego. He still doesn't care about you. Story 25. My ex-fiancé. He was very controlling and actually caused my depression. He made a lot of comments about my weight and cheated on me during the time he made me do sports to lose more weight. He also had a narcissistic personality, which sadly is getting worse by each year. I broke it off and slowly gained some self-esteem and independence. We're still friends now, but I sometimes doubt if our friendship will last. Sadly, I owe him so much for some of the good things he did for me as I was starting out as an adult and feel guilty. Or he'll make you feel guilty for abandoning him. His personality as of late is evolving to becoming more assertive and controlling. He makes very stupid life decisions, and several times, me and his friends have staged interventions for him. I don't know if he's just stupid or suffering from some sort of mental breakdown like his father did. Looking back, I dodged a huge bullet. Around the time I ended a relationship, it was $30,000 in debt. He would never stand up for me when his family screamed at me, and yes, the multiple cheatings. It was a toxic relationship I was glad I was over with. Story 26. Gay marriage became legal. The very day the marriage equality became the law of land in the United States, I was confronted with that option as a reality. It was crystal clear in my mind that I could never marry this man. As if trying to help confirm this fact, he proceeded to insist on leaving the big celebration rally in Los Angeles because it was boring and he wanted to get substances. I asked him if he could please forego that as it was a historic day I wanted us to celebrate and appreciate together. No dice. I was trying to control him. Honestly, he was an emotionally and verbally cruel schmuck who weaponized his own anxiety, and I'm still figuring out how I was manipulated into staying with him for so damn long. I'm so glad that gay marriage snapped me out of it. I decided that day to leave him despite our intertwined lives and all the money he owed me, etc. Worth it. Oh, and by complete chance, the amazing man I'm with today, and the love of my life, worked directly on preparing the Obergefell versus Hodges case for the Supreme Court. That's the very case that resulted in the court ruling that the 14th Amendment requires states to license and recognize same-sex marriage. Thanks, babe. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 27. I was with a guy for a year. Everything was great at first, and I fell in love pretty quickly, but within a few months of dating, I just knew he wasn't the one. I guess I fell in love with the idea of him, but I never truly felt super strong feelings for him. It was selfish of me for staying with him for an entire year, but I guess I really wanted it to work. Almost every little thing he did got on my nerves, and I feel like if you truly love someone, little things about them shouldn't annoy you to the extreme. So I guess that's how I realized this guy was definitely not the one for me. Story 28. I dated my ex for 2 years in high school, and at the time I thought we were made for each other. We clicked on so many levels, music interests, and much more I can think of right now. However, the longer we dated, the more I noticed certain things. She was very against me wanting to major in engineering in college because she claimed engineering doesn't help people like medicine does, which is what she wanted to do in life. It's funny though, I'm now a pre-med student for other reasons. She was very adamant about us fighting when we had a disagreement, and being someone who dislikes conflict, I always refused to fight and just talk it out like mature people, but she was never interested in that and would ignore me for hours on end. She went and cheated on me twice. Told me both times that the second time said, and I quote, "He'll let me off the first time, so I did it again." She was very witchy. She said so herself. And before we dated and in between us dating on and off, she would go around and try something new with a guy. The last straw was when she would tell all her friends about the things she did while I was sitting beside her. The most embarrassing thing I ever had to sit through. There were quite a few other things that she did. However, these were the big four things that stood out to me. Story 29. I don't know if I believe in the concept of the one, but I realized early on, the first 6 to 8 months, because of her higher financial expectations of lifestyle. She comes from a wealthy family that pretty much gives her whatever she wants and supports her life. Though a very nice thing, it definitely shaped her expectations. When things would elevate to more serious financial commitments in the relationship, I would be expected to deliver well above my current means, alone, akin to what she's familiar with. It was subtle in the beginning because of early stage relationship bliss, but became more prevalent later on. Never marry princesses when you don't make enough. Story 30. He totaled my car on Valentine's Day morning. I was home with our infant son while he got hammered with friends. He decided to drive my car home at 4:30 in the morning with a BAC over 3 times the legal limit. Hit 2 parked cars, got arrested, got bailed out, came home, matter-of-factly told me that my car was demolished, then went to bed. I tried to make it work for another year, but that was truly the last straw. Thankfully, we co-parent well, and I married my soulmate in May. Sometimes those terrible things happen, you learn from them, and you can turn it all around. Story 31. When he valued video games, Pokemon cards, and his other collection flame of the month like Funko Pops over anything our son or myself actually needed, including time with him. I started that relationship with a healthy savings, a place of my own, fully paid off vehicle, and fast track to a good life. And now I have no vehicle, live with my best friend and her family, nothing to my name, major kidney stones and anxiety problems, and a child that I have had to be pretty creative in providing for. But it's all good. He's got everything he could ever ask for, responsibility-free. I have a wonderful little one that makes life a joy and wows me every day with new words or sweet or silly things he does. I'd still be a bit salty over the ex, but over time, I'm pretty sure he'll see what he let go and walk away from one heck of a kid who's growing into one heck of a person. Story 32. I hadn't seen my family for over 2 years because of certain circumstances that are not important, and close to 3 without seeing my mom. I was visiting them for 3 weeks, and my ex wanted to come with me to vacation, so I got her tickets as well. My mother, brother, and brother's girlfriend drive to pick us up at the airport, and we go to In-N-Out because my ex had mentioned once before that she misses those burgers from when she used to live in CA, and my family's the kind of people that would try to make her feel good. We eat, we talk a lot, catch up, etc., the usual. When we're leaving, everyone goes to the restroom except my girlfriend and I. She grabs my arm and says, "Are you mad at me? Are you not giving me enough attention?" I was so confused I couldn't answer. That's when it hit me how much attention she needed and how sometimes she would just not put herself in my position before complaining about something. Signs had been there before, but it wasn't until then that I realized how selfish she can be. Story 33. A few weeks after she left me for her coworker. We were high school sweethearts, and even before we dated, I had a raging crush on her for almost 2 years. She wasn't exactly my first crush, but she was my hardest crush. After almost 12 years of being together in some form of relationship or another, I guess she came to her senses. So she told me, and realized she didn't love me. Like, ever. At first, I thought this was one of those spiritual tests that we were to go through to see if we could make it, but after a month or so, I figured that life wasn't like the movies, and this change was forever. The separation was official a month or so later, and the divorce happened about a year after that. Story 34. The time he called the phone number on my phone because it wasn't saved under a contact, thinking I was cheating on him. It was one of my clients who was also a female. Only her jealous AF boyfriend answered the phone, thinking his girl was cheating on him, and the guy she was screwing was calling her. So our 2 idiot jealous boyfriends were yelling at each other, accusing each other of being with the other's girlfriend, over nothing, because they didn't have her number saved and she was a new client. I legit thought maybe it was a new male client they had called until I saw her again, and she explained it to me. We had a good laugh and had both dumped the losers. Fun times. Story 35. Among many things, I realized he very rarely had a conversation with me. I would speak and he'd either totally ignore it, belittle me, or not respond to what I just said to change the subject entirely. He very rarely asked me any questions instead of speaking in length about himself or his views. I remember very clearly on my birthday he said, "I was going to get you a movie, but didn't know what you'd like." Mother trucker we've been dating for 2 years. I'm an idiot for having stayed so long, but it was mostly me saving up money and playing pretend for the last 7 months so I can move out. He couldn't tell the difference because he didn't care about me as a girlfriend, just a roommate who would listen to his ramblings. Story 36. First, I realized I preferred to spend my free time with my friends instead of her. I soon started spending more time at work voluntarily instead of going home, and finally, after years of being on the same page of not wanting kids, she tells me that she wants kids now. Spent a couple weeks trying to figure out how to break up with her. We'd been together for nearly 10 years. I then found text messages on her phone that confirmed she had been cheating on me for months. I was relieved it was over, and I didn't have to be the bad guy. Wow, the universe gave you an out. Lucky guy. Story 37. When my ex tried to accuse me of being misogynistic for not wanting to see the Ghostbusters reboot. Then when I told her that doesn't look good and the reviews I heard about it were bad, she asked me if it was a guy or a girl reviewer. And when I informed her that I'd seen reviews from both and that in my opinion it looks bad, she called me a misogynist. After about 30 minutes of arguing and not getting through to her, I just said, screw it, grabbed my crap and left. Tried to patch it up, even offered to go see the movie, but she made up her mind that I was just sexist. Needless to say, I broke it off a couple days later. Story 38. I got some hard crap. I'll go with a more slow-paced one. I didn't have much luck with men in high school, college either, so I resorted to the online dating thing. Back in February of 2010, I met this guy online. He was cute, liked the same music as me, smoked, and lived close by. Now I figured he meets a lot of my checklist requirements. I'll give him a shot. And we met, things went good, hung out again. Things continued to be good. He was laid back, polite, and didn't want intimacy right away. Next thing you know, we were a couple. Then he moved in. He needed a place to go. I ended up moving to a new city because I transferred to a cheaper college. He came with me. He was the backbone to my social life at this point. I wasn't making new friends. Sure, I'd make small talk with people at school and at work, but socializing for me was pretty much me and him hanging at home, going to the mall, going get food, then our trips back to our old town. Eventually, I ended up moving back home. One day, when I was high off being surrounded by friends again, I remember we were all being crass weird with our sense of humor, and he tried to chime in and just wasn't funny. Like, at all. It was cringeworthy. I thought about it that night and realized how much for that year I was living out of my hometown that I didn't laugh. I never really noticed how unfunny this guy was and how our convos were so mundane. I was always like, where do you want to eat? This food is good. I have a headache. That guy just cut me off in traffic. Did you like the movie? It was always like small talk throughout the whole relationship. Now, before I sound like a total schmuck, I didn't dump him right away. I attempted to let him get established back in our town, and in the process, I found out that he had flirted with a few girls online, so it was whatever. But when I found out, I was already mentally done with the guy, so I was fine with it. Story 39. When I realized I kind of dreaded hanging out with her. We texted a lot, and she'd actively go over our text all the time, then immediately call me out if I ever expressed an opinion different from something I'd said in passing 8 months ago. She also decided at some point that I didn't give her credit for the things she finds, and that became this obnoxious sticking point where whenever I'd find something cool and try to share it with her, she'd immediately turn it into a fight about how she showed it to me months ago. In fairness, that probably did happen a few times, but again, it was her expecting me to remember exact details of every conversation we'd ever had for months afterwards. No allowances for things being mentioned in passing or me forgetting. I was expected to know and lavish credit to her for every link she ever passed to me. And she started lying about it. I think she was so taken with her internal narrative that I was a crappy boyfriend for this particular reason that she unintentionally put that framework on everything. At a certain point, it got so ridiculous, her claiming to have shown me brand new movie trailers months ago, that I just stopped trying to talk about things I enjoyed with her. Story 40. All the little things added up to he didn't value or respect me as a person. Still, it took me 2 years to realize we didn't match up well. Highlight reel includes repeatedly joking about him hurting my dog because he was getting old and expensive because of health issues. Only stopped when every time, after my first 3 rational this is not appropriate and is upsetting because style conversations, he started talking about it and I immediately burst into tears and screamed at him to stop. He held me down on the bed and joked that it would be really easy to mistreat me because, look, I couldn't even stop him right then. Not once, twice. Only got off the first time I screamed, and the second time I threatened him if he didn't get off me. He'd hurtful, snide, nasty jokes about me sleeping with his best friend, who lived with us, to punish me for not doing my chores when and how he wanted me to do them. Yeah, he should be behind bars. Story 41. I dated a guy for 3 years. I was going to propose to him when he graduated college this year. Sadly, I got a well-paying job in another state 5 hours drive away, forcing me to move. I was more than willing to put up with driving down on Fridays and driving back Sundays, just to see him and he could visit me when he got a chance. He basically said he wants to have access to me 7 days a week and would be paranoid that I'd cheat on him. He also lied to me when I applied for the job, saying he would be okay with it if I got it. He cut all ties 1 week after I moved. Story 42. When I was in pain or hurt by his actions, ditching me for whatever reason, not considering my feelings when doing anything, always forgetting everything, I would talk to him about how and what he did that hurt me. Instead of trying to hear me out on why I was hurting because of him, he would go to his friends and family to confirm with them that he was normal while I was crazy. Almost every fight or conversation would basically end like this. Friends and family say that I'm normal and you're not, so if you're hurting, that sucks, but I'm just going to keep doing what I want to do because I'm right, regardless if you're hurting. It would have been better if he would at least try to understand, but he just gaslighted me and made other people call me crazy so he could continue doing whatever he pleased while I cried myself to sleep every night, telling myself I was the problem. Fortunately, he broke up with me. I would have stayed forever. I put him in a pedestal, thinking I was the problem for the longest time. Because of the breakup, I realized, wow, damn, I wasn't crazy. I wasn't perfect in the relationship, but at least I know that I'm normal, and it was easier for him to blame me for everything rather than compromising with each other. I loved that kid with all my heart, and I'm pretty sure I will for a long, long time, but at least I know better now and won't come running back to someone like that. Story 43. The way he treated his formerly estranged and back in his life after 12 years, 14-year-old daughter, disgusting and disgraceful. He was manipulative, mean, and lied outright to catch her doing things teens do. Fortunately, she never lived with us and wasn't subjected to his BS very much. Poor kid had a really crappy life, and when she came back, I was looking forward to helping her and building a relationship. We each had similar lives when young. His unapologetic, narcissistic, cruel attitude toward her made me feel so sick. I knew he could never make up for it with me, or her. He actually tried to make himself a victim of her mother and justify taking it out on her. Ugh, no. Bye. Story 44. When she met my parents. We dated for 2 years. I bought a ring and decided to propose in San Francisco after she met my parents. I hadn't told her before, but my parents are very wealthy. We flew first class, drove one of my dad's cars, spent 2 weeks driving around California before spending another week at their vacation home in Lake Tahoe, all expenses paid. I was going to pop the question on our last day in SF before the flight home. The entire 5-hour drive from Tahoe to SF, all she could talk about was the money. Mainly, when did I get it? I threw up a red flag, so I postponed the proposal. We got home, and suddenly nothing was good enough for her. My parents should buy us a new house. I should have a trust fund. I need to make more so we could have nicer things. I already made good money. When we fly, we can only fly first class. This continued for a few months when it finally came to the breaking point. She bought a new car and expected me to make the payments. Broke it off shortly thereafter. In better news, my fiancé is awesome and couldn't care less about the money. Story 45. We were both celebrating birthdays. Mine was the 12th and hers was the 15th. We had planned on going out clubbing with friends. The day of her birthday, her friends say they have no money. I say I'll pay for them, but they refuse. Then comes up with the idea of only us two going to the club. I said I would rather have all of our friends together. Why don't we go out in the town, catch a nice dinner, and go sightseeing? She refuses. Starts a fight with me, ignores my calls, and ends up going to the club with her friends. How they got the money out of nowhere? Who knows? It is safe to say that was the last straw. Dropped off her gift at her house and said I was done. Story 46. They came out as trans male. After I'd broken up, I held on hope that maybe one day we would get back together. We were amazing together. We truly cared for one another, and it was a special connection, but eventually they came out as trans. Now, let me say, I 100% support the trans population. I love all of you. Trans men and women are some of the toughest people I've ever met, and people are horrible towards the community. But personally, I'm straight. I find no attraction to the male form. They were pansexual, so there was no doubt the feelings were real, but I can never be in a relationship with absolutely no physical attraction. I still know them well, and we talk when we can. They have a great support system and a stable life. I smile whenever I see how happy they are. There's a difference in their smile. I'd only ever seen the smile they have now one time before, and that was when we went to prom. We cuddled up in this chair outside on the balcony and just laughed and smiled and enjoyed ourselves. I'd always wondered where that smile went. Now that they're out, transitioned, and living their life the way they're meant to, that smile shows up in every picture. I want to cry a little from how happy I am, knowing that they're truly happy. Story 47. Late to the party, and this is still fresh, but yeah. Basically, I realized when I looked at my future, marriage, kids, whatever, I didn't see it with her. She and her family throw insults as a form of affection. I never really cared for this. She'd poke and prod me and do things she knew makes me angry because she thought it was funny, and if I ever had the audacity to stand up and go, hey, come on. She'd just whine about how she was just kidding and why do I have to be so serious? She'd flat out tell me things I liked doing were stupid. Bands I liked sucked, and that friends I had were boring. She'd hang up the phone on me over trivial stuff, stop speaking to me over dumb arguments, and overall, just made me feel like I was freaking stupid. I tried to bring this up to her, and she would either, again, deflect that she was just kidding, or in the cases where I guess she thought I was serious, started crying. There was no in between. I recently moved away for a job, and she came to visit me for my birthday. I was not excited for her to visit, and within an hour of her visiting, she'd spent 70% of her time complaining. That was basically my final confirmation that this was not something I wanted to try and fix. Despite all that, I don't think she's a terrible person. I just don't think our personalities are compatible. Okay, buddy. What is a relationship deal breaker for you that others might not agree with? An obsession with Hollywood and celebrities. I understand having a favorite actor or actress and whatnot, but I don't give a crap about their relationships, their health advice, or any part of their personal lives. My brother never shuts up what celebrities are up to and almost worships them. Newsflash, a lot are really not that great or worthy of that kind of attention, and many are poor role models. Story 2. I can't stand people who whine incessantly. I'm totally down for a good vent, but every conversation shouldn't be a venting session. If I hear someone whine about a problem for hours and days on end and then don't do anything to fix it, it just starts to get on my nerves terribly. People always say you need to be supportive of your partner, but I'm not going to be the entire system propping them up. Also, people with no ambition or passion in life. If I ask someone what their biggest life goal is and it's just scraping together enough money to buy beer and cigarettes, I'm out. Story 3. If we're planning out free time to see each other and she's only making small availability while I bend over backwards to make time, please, in any way along the line of, if you do X, we can do Y. Any implication that being together is not a mutually enjoyed experience. It is all well and good to do certain things that each other may or may not enjoy a great deal. I'll go to a symphony with her. She can come shooting with me. But some women can err on the side of the whole dating experience being a favor. Story 4. Spending money foolishly when you don't have any or much, or just in general even if you had the money. I was dating a girl that would constantly foolishly put things on her credit card when she was working at a coffee shop, making just above minimum wage. She spent way above her means, always making minimum payments on her card. Of course, the credit card company loved this, so they would send her notices that her limit can be increased. Stupidly enough, she always accepted. At one point, she had to move back home to pay off her debt. Her debt wasn't going down as she moved back. My ex would buy clothes, and instead of returning the clothes she changed her mind on, still had the receipt and tags on them, she wouldn't bother and give them away. She also apparently bought her used car with her credit card, over $10,000 instead of financing it. I can't be with someone that is that careless about money. Story 5. I could never date someone with military affiliation for multiple reasons. My dad is a retired army, so I grew up around military people and wouldn't want my husband to be that way. I wouldn't want my life to consist of mostly military personnel and families forever. A surprising number of military people I've met are giant schmucks who think everyone should worship the ground they walk on. I know it's not all, but I've seen way too many to get past it. I couldn't handle the long times apart. I'd be limited to what branch they could be a part of because my dad was in the army and craps on certain branches. Army men straight up make me think about my dad, and that's weird. Story 6. My soon-to-be ex-wife wanted into my LastPass account. I work in IT. I go to great lengths to make sure all my passwords are secure. Some of them are for household bill accounts. Stuff she needed too, so I shared them out if she asked, but she would never get my master password. I attempted to end it all in July and told her my master password so she'd have access to anything important she needed. The attempt failed, and she flipped out on me when I went to change it because she thought I was just giving it to her. During the 3 days that she had the correct password, she snooped and also got upset that I wasn't hiding anything in there. I broke up with her 2 days after I left the hospital. I haven't regretted it once. I'm doing much better now. Being hospitalized got me in contact with so many resources that I desperately needed. Plus, leaving her did wonders. I even got fast-tracked into a sleep study and should get my CPAP machine next week. If you're wondering, it was introduced to CBT or DBT or mindfulness and is very effective for me, but why MMV? Story 7. When someone, this can apply to both genders, is the type that has to be in constant contact with you. I have friends who disagree with me and label it as cute or caring, but really, to me, if you can't go a few hours without texting back and forth, that's just needy and can be suffocating. It's like I have a job and responsibilities. It shouldn't be that big a deal to disappear for a bit. Story 8. Ignorance. Willful or unintentional is a huge one. A lack of baseline intelligence is at the forefront of deal-breaking for me. I broke it off with a girl once after she told me that she didn't believe that dinosaurs ever existed. She sincerely said that she needed proof, so I offered to take her to a museum. She asked me, "So will we see real bones?" I said, "No, they will most likely be a plaster cast of the original fossils." She responded with, "See? How do you know they aren't just trying to trick you?" We didn't make it through the week. Story 9. Grown adults, specifically men, in my experience, who say they're bad at doing simple chores and make their partners do all the housework. You're not bad at cleaning toilets or wiping counters. You're just a lazy schmuck and still expect your mother or any woman for that matter to do everything for you. Nothing worse than babying the person you're in a relationship with. Screw that. Story 10.
disliking travel and generally trying interesting things. I know people who are content never traveling, going to the same 5 restaurants repeatedly and won't even try a new beer when they found the one IPA they like. I don't need someone who's super spontaneous and different. I like routine and comfort, and I'll watch the same romantic comedies on repeat until I pass away. However, I live in a big city with amazing food and so much going on. I want to date someone who wants to explore, find new places to eat and drink, go to festivals and events, and would be up for renting a car and going away for the weekend. Story 11. Threatening to end themselves after any kind of argument. Screw that noise. Looking at you, Rose. I'd like to point out that I noped the crap out of that relationship. The night she did it, I called the cops as I was downtown in New York City. She was brought to a hospital in Queens. I called a lawyer to cover my bum, my parents and friends to tell them where I was, and her parents to tell them what happened and to come and get their problem. Screw that. I'm getting married to a wonderful girl and my best friend who I connect to on every level in May of 2018. Good for everybody who got out as well. Story 12. Being fiscally irresponsible. It's not always debt. I can deal with something like having a low-paying job and having a budget to be able to pay all your obligatory bills, but I can't have a pretty high salary and living paycheck to paycheck. Poor financial sense and lack of future planning skills are stressors I do not want to deal with or have to be mindful of for a significant other. If we go through any real-life money-related problems or we have to struggle, we can get through it together and I will support you, but I need to know that you're not going to be one of the factors that's causing it. Story 13. If you're not willing to spend 100% of all your hard-earned money on me, we can't be together. Just kidding. I was once with a guy who expected that, though. Mind you, I was in college and barely had anything. He was jobless and literally had nothing but a dwindling savings they had to save for bills. Understandable. I guess my first mistake would be dating him in the first place, but he didn't start off without a job. It would suggest things to do together that would cost money, and it took maybe 1 or 2 times before realizing that he didn't have any intention of paying for anything. I would suggest things that didn't cost much. Staying in and watching a movie, bringing food over to cook with each other, and he would call me a homebody. Dude, I'm doing this so I don't keep going broke before the next paycheck. This is an utter undoing, however. He cheated on me, and I only found out about this from his sister, who thought we had broken up because why else would he bring another girl to a family dinner? She called me, crying because she thought we'd have to stop being friends. Cheating is a deal breaker for me, and it's an even bigger deal breaker when you try to make out like I'm crazy for thinking cheating is a deal breaker. I just wanted to let everyone know how cheap he was, in addition to being a cheater. Story 14. I worked, she didn't. She was lazy and rarely did any cleaning or cooking. I like a tidy home, so I wouldn't complain and instead just do it myself once home. One thing that really bothered me though was her makeup pads being casually left on my nice cream-colored rug. That specific corner of said rug was not so cream anymore. Despite asking her repeatedly to do this one thing and dispose of her pads in the bin, came home one day to find them once again scattered on my rug. I knew asking her to clean up was futile, so I just started picking them up myself, and she lost it. She started arguing with me, stating I was purposely making her feel bad about it. I'd barely said a word. I asked her to call her dad there and then because we were done. The following morning, I went to work and she was gone when I got back. Oh, she also liked to watch TV in bed. Of course, she didn't have anything to get up for, and I struggled to sleep with so much sound. One night, she refused to turn down the volume, so I grabbed my pillow and went to sleep on the sofa. Again, she lost it, and I was being a schmuck. A huge weight was lifted when I got out of that one. Story 15. Divorced people. That's not fair, and I'm not proud of my bias, but I can't date someone who has promised to love someone else and stick with them through good times and bad, and has built a whole life with that person, and then change their mind after only a few years. I wouldn't be able to accept that with me this time. They really mean it. Again, you asked for things other people might not agree with, and I know my bias isn't fair, but that's how I feel. Story 16. A large, close-knit family. I come from a massive, severely messed up family, so being stuck in the midst of someone else kicks in my PTSD hard and locks me into fight or flight until hours after I leave. Plus, cultural differences make integrating into a family almost impossible for me. In my experience, guys from happy families get angry and offended when I'm not immediately eager to become their mom's new daughter. 1, I'm shy. It takes me a while to get comfortable with new people. 2, stopping by to hang out with the in-laws, no matter how normal it is to you, will get you eviscerated in my family. That is just not done, ever. When it comes to holidays, I'd rather spend an hour or two with each family than come home to our own celebration, preferably one that involves us cooking together in a Lord of the Rings marathon. That generally means a guy with very few family ties. Story 17. Broke up with a girl for being racist. She was talking smack about Latinos. Little did she know I'm Latino, despite the fact that I look white. The shock and awkwardness when I told her, and then she attempted to fix it by praising Latinos and saying how she was talking about a small minority. She was mentally unstable anyway, so I broke up with her. Story 18. I had a guy straight up tell me he's never talked to a girl before and he never had any platonic female friends. He has a sister and a mother. He never talks to his sister. Doesn't know anything about her except that she's attractive, and the way he talks about his mother was so off-putting. Like he has zero respect for her and just expects her to do everything for him. I pieced out when I realized he had some really weird ideas on what girls should be like. Girls should be neat and not tease guys. They should giggle and be flirty and always be clean and not say bad words and dress nice and smell nice, etc., etc. And if you weren't exactly like that, then you were like a guy and he's not into guys. Story 19. Any variation of the Marilyn Monroe. If you can't handle me at my worst, you sure as hell don't deserve me at my best meme. On its face, it's perfectly fine, even has a bit of truth to it. In practice, however, it's been my experience that it's just an excuse for these women to act like a witch and expect people to put up with it because of their looks. Maybe just a small sample size issue, I understand, but it's been consistent enough to probably cause me to look elsewhere. Story 20. I have a lot of weird pacing when I first start dating someone. Before we become exclusive and settle into a relationship, if someone moves too fast or too slow for me, it puts me off hard. I know it's probably not reasonable, but it's a reaction I have trouble controlling. For example, with online dating, if someone wants to meet within 1 to 2 messages, that tends to put me off. But if after 2 weeks they don't seem interested in meeting, that also puts me off. I went on a couple dates with a guy a few years ago. We connected well initially, but he was kind of acting like we were a couple before the first date, like sending me good morning messages and crap before we'd even met, and trying to make out with me all night on our first date. He seemed to put out that I didn't stand up to kiss him when we first got to the restaurant, etc. I saw him again, but what finally did me in was when a friend was coming up from out of town and he wanted to hang out with the both of us. Like 2 dates. I already told you I wanted to move slower and you want to hang out with my friends? I just couldn't. After that, Story 21. People who lie to someone that they're dating in order to test them. There was someone I had a crush on for a long time, then I found out that she tests men on their first date. If her date tries to pay for both meals, she stops him and insists on paying for her own dinner. If he lets her pay, or if he never offers to pay in the first place, he fails the test. In order to pass, he has to insist on paying for her meal even after she says that she would rather pay for herself. This type of thing bothers me because it means she's not honest about what she wants. Let's ignore the issue of who should pay in the first place. If she says that she prefers to pay for herself, the correct, responsible thing to do is to let her. There are many women who do prefer to pay for their own meals on dates. By saying that she wants to pay for herself when she really doesn't want to, she's misleading her date about what she wants. This sets up a relationship where you can never be sure if she's telling you what she really wants or she's lying in hopes that you'll figure out what she wants you to do. That's not a situation that I would be happy with in long term. Story 22. When my wife and I got together in the beginning, we had our first spat, as everyone does. She got a little loud and said mean words at me. I immediately left the room and told her when she calmed down enough to maintain her composure, we could talk. Now mind you, we both swear like sailors, and I love a brilliant woman with a filthy mouth, but when we're having a heated conversation and she gets loud, that dog doesn't hunt. So after that day, we sat down and had a talk, and we agreed that we don't argue in front of others, and we don't shout or swear at one another. It changes so much. Everything said is generally pretty well thought out, and neither of us end up saying things we cannot take back. So many of our friends think we're perfect, never argue, and even after 10 years are blissfully in love and have intimacy almost daily. We're quick to correct them and explain our position on arguments. We argue or have disagreements as much as anyone, but they're for us to have, not the whole grocery store, friends over for dinner, and damn sure not Facebook. Story 23. I won't date someone who has a mental illness and refuses to seek help or try to better themselves. When someone's just a constant drain with all their negativity, I can't handle it. I hate being around people like that. It's not that I'm selfish and wouldn't be able to support a partner going through that. I did in the past and it was awful. It was barely a relationship. It was like I was just his unappreciated therapist. When I needed support, he couldn't provide it, because his issue always took priority. When I tried to be positive and uplifting, he shot me down and would sometimes lash out, tell me any and all efforts were pointless because this is just who he is and he's destined for a life of misery. Last time I posted this answer, I got told I didn't understand depression, and it's not that simple. I do suffer from depression myself, and I get that it's hard to take the right steps and seek help, but you gotta do it. Some depressed people are content always being that way, and I can't deal with that. Story 24. Picky eaters. If you can't go to a restaurant without remarking the entire meal so what you get on your plate is completely different from what is on the menu, we can't date. It's childish and embarrassing. I feel ashamed and feel like I have to apologize to the server through a giant tip. Fast food is also impossible because picky eaters negate the fast in the fast food. It takes longer to order. Punk kids and McDonald's probably messed it up. Go through the drive-thru again or go inside. Sometimes I'm not dressed to go inside. Do we have to plan on dressing acceptable to get McDonald's? That's messed up. Pizza is also a pain in the butt. You'd think I could just get half what I want and half what she wants. Nope. A pepper might get on her side, and trust me, she'll taste it even if it's taken off. Now she's lifting the cheese and toppings off every piece and obviously not enjoying her food. This is a very aggravating subject for me. Story 25. Obsessing over watching sports. It's boring to me and I don't care. I am a dude. I had a crush on this girl for a while I knew from my high school crew. I was always insanely attracted to her. I had a chance to ask her out 3 or 4 years after meeting her. She was usually dating someone and their paths didn't cross much. She came over to my house a few times to hang out. This was around test time for her college classes, so she didn't have much free time. Of course, there was a World Series basketball game going on. This was a big deal to her every time she came over. She was so engaged with watching it, it sucked for me trying to pretend to care. It was so boring. I think she assumed since I'm a guy I must know that the game is on. I would think she would come over, I'd cook, we would watch movies or study or bang or whatever. Instead, I tried to be cool and endure it. We definitely did not have much in common and more than just the sports thing. This lasted about 2 weeks, and I watched 3 full basketball games. She ended up meeting her now husband at a sports bar like a week later. Most of her common friends were mad at her for cheating on me, but she didn't. My friends thought my reason for not being interested in her anymore was me just being a witch about losing this chick I crushed over to this huge bodybuilder guy. Okay, my self-esteem took a hit, but we just didn't have anything in common except being physically attracted to each other. We talked about it a few days after she met that guy. We ended in good vibes. Story 26. Career ambition. If you're content with your position, pay, role, etc., and you don't have any desire to advance, I find it lazy and complacent. Justifying complacency with, I don't want to deal with the politics, is a cop-out I hear too often by far too many people. I feel this way about education too. Not necessarily academic ambition, but reading and learning new things is very important to me. Working 9 to 5, followed by watching TV all night is freaking lame. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 27. Sleeping with me. Like, I'm down for anything and will probably knock out next to you for a bit after, but I don't want to sleep next to you every night. I don't want to cuddle when I'm trying to fall asleep. I don't want to roll over and find you next to me in the morning. If we live together, I want my own room with a bed and a door that I can shut on when I want to be alone. If they can't deal with that and not pout, I'm out. Story 28. I know it sounds harsh, but I've developed a bias against overweight people. It signifies a lack of self-control. Nothing wrong with a little chub. I don't need a fitness model, just someone who respects themselves enough to try and take care of their body. Getting into a relationship with someone who doesn't care about being healthy is basically just setting yourself up for problems in the near future. You'd think more people would cite this, but nowadays, everyone's getting fat, so no one cares. Also, serious people who can't joke or relax. Such a killjoy to try and do fun activities and feel on edge the whole time because said person can't seem to enjoy themselves. You'd think this would be rare, but it isn't. Story 29. I have so many deal breakers, it's actually quite sad, but this one is probably the only one most people in here would disagree with or not understand. Intimacy drive. I don't like having intimacy. I especially don't like knowing that my partner hasn't had intimacy in ages because I haven't been in the mood, assuming they're not cheating on me. I'm prepared to live my entire life as a bachelorette if I have to. It would be nice if I could find another woman who also wasn't too bothered with intimacy. Kisses, hugs, and cuddles are nice though. Story 30. I could never date someone that argues with people they don't know on Facebook. They all get heated over some comments sometimes, but I see it so much. All your friends and family can see you calling some middle-aged woman from Ohio a witch because she doesn't agree with your political stance. It's immature. And frankly, if the only way you know how to disagree with someone is to broadcast misspelled ignorance over a keyboard, you're a coward. Story 31. Smoking. I got engaged to a girl after dating a while, and she really didn't smoke a whole lot. It's more a social thing, accompanied with alcohol and maybe some other things, but we would spend whole days together without her smoking a cigarette. We got engaged and moved into an apartment together. I worked, and she didn't, which didn't help my mood, but she would buy cigarettes all the time. I told her 3 times to quit. That last time I told her to leave. Story 32. For me, a real deal breaker is any mental issue. I just can't be with a person who isn't mentally stable. That's probably because I lost a few years of my life with a crazy witch. Unfortunately, it took me a few years until I figured she's a mess. She was manipulating me a lot, and I was basically trying to see her from the better side to ultimately find that she doesn't have a better side. She had an OCD and maybe even more issues, but she refused to get proper treatment. Another deal breaker is low intelligence. This usually sorts itself in the first date as I don't have much to talk about with stupid people. If there's an awkward silence after an hour or so, I usually end it there. Story 33. I've been called transphobic for saying that I wouldn't date a female to male trans. But they are literally male, they might say. Still doesn't turn me on. It wouldn't work. I've also been called a racist for preferring very pale skin and light brown hair. Well, people have preferences, especially when it comes to intimacy. I'm not going to put myself into a certain-to-fail situation just to signal virtue. Would you call a 20-year-old who doesn't want to date an 80-year-old a gerontophobe? I don't think so. Is it possible that I would meet somebody who is the total antithesis of my preferences and yet fall for him anyway? Of course it is. I would not refuse just because of something like that, but in general I have more than enough experience to know who and what I like. And no amount of calling me names will change that. Story 34. Stupidity. It's the only thing I can't get over. I cannot or will not spend time explaining that zodiac signs are BS. The moon landing was real, immigrants aren't taking your jobs, etc. Intelligent people disagree on how to approach factual issues. Stupid people read nonsense in their tea leaves. Story 35. Call me petty, plenty have, but I can't stand people who smoke grass. I know it's partially societal priming, but every friend or girlfriend or family member who starts and only does it on occasion, without fail, starts using substances more often and losing motivation. It's so hard to talk about it too because I know my position is at such a disadvantage. People are very easily insulted about it, so I'll just try to steer clear altogether. Story 36. I absolutely will not have a monogamous relationship. I don't care who it is. If Venus herself wants to be my girlfriend, I will not go for it if the relationship is monogamous. I just can't be happy doing that. Right now, I don't even want a primary partner, although that may change someday. This is almost kind of a reverse deal breaker because my absolute insistence on not having rules about other partners placed on me or placing rules about other partners on others is a major deal breaker for most people who might otherwise want some sort of relationship with me. Then again, there is a small subset of people who find out what my expectations are and go, wow, I've been looking for something like this forever. They have the same problem as me, not wanting monogamy, not wanting rules, but having a hard time finding partners who want the same sort of relationship. Most people, I suppose, disagree with my deal breaker, as well they should. My lifestyle is not for everyone, and someone trying to make it work when it's not for them will end up miserable. Story 37. No intimacy before marriage. I think turning marriage into an, okay, you can do it now, devalues the whole thing to an extent, because it distracts people from what it's really about. Love and commitment and wanting to celebrate and reinforce that for life. Also, intimacy is a way that a couple needs to be compatible. It's an expression of love, and it's just not acceptable to me to refuse to do that with someone before committing to them forevermore. You need that information before you commit because it needs to factor into that decision. I wouldn't marry someone I'd never been able to hug and kiss and say I love them to either. It's probably unhealthy to hold back from that arbitrarily. Story 38. I stopped dating a guy who was my age because he had absolutely no idea who Lord Voldemort was. Like he'd never even heard of Harry Potter, the biggest franchise ever when we were growing up. That to me was like someone asking who Darth Vader is. You would have to be either legitimately living under a rock or purposefully avoiding mainstream media for your entire life. Plus, I need to know what Hogwarts house you're in before we get serious. Boy, bye. Story 39. Not knowing how to cook. I haven't broken up with anyone for this, but 3/4 of my exes only knew how to make a box of mac and cheese or heat up a frozen pizza. Meanwhile, I love to cook. Want to go to cooking school, etc., but I'm not about to become your housewife. I feel like so many 20-something-year-old men don't know basic things like cooking and doing laundry nowadays. Be an adult. Story 40. A couple months back, I was seeing this girl. She came over to my place and we made out in my bed. She said she wasn't down for intimacy outside of a relationship. That's fine, at least she was upfront. But the real deal breaker was the next time she came over, she gave me a sneak peek whistle. She said, and I quote, I don't think you deserve the whole whistle yet. I totally understand if you're not down to do it with anyone, not your boyfriend, but to use intimacy as a carrot and a stick to get someone to date you is just so discomforting. Story 41. I don't have a lot of money. It's totally my fault. I made plenty of bad decisions. I'm married and my wife doesn't make a lot of money either. Also made bad decisions. Many we made together. If at any point she made it clear to me that she wanted her engagement and her wedding rings had to be nice and expensive, then I would have never asked her to marry me. Even if she made it clear that the ring had to have a diamond and be made out of gold, I wouldn't have asked her. I hate jewelry and I hate everything it represents. Kind of ditto with makeup. If she spent a bunch of money on makeup and then a ton of time using it, then we would be done in rings. Also drinking. That's probably the most controversial thing I can say. I don't drink, I don't go out, I don't like parties. If your idea of relaxing is having a glass of wine, you'll be doing it without me. Story 42. Had an ex that would call me every single day after work and vent about how they were treating her, and every time I'd say, have you talked to her or done anything else about it? And the answer was always no. After a month of this, I told her I don't want to hear her complain about it anymore unless she actually took action to do something about it. She was none too pleased and acted passive-aggressive towards me until I broke it off. Story 43. Honestly, I've always had intimacy and compatibility as a deal breaker. It's not something everybody would agree with. I've actually had people try to argue with me and call me a schmuck, etc. Well, you're going to be very lonely for the rest of your life, you schmuck. Whatever, lady. At least I won't be miserable. Intimacy compatibility is crucial. If you have a different level of drive than your partner, if you even have a different level of preference from your partner, you'll be missing out on some of the greatest intimacy a human being can ever know. It's the whole point of love and relationships to begin with. If you're not on the same level as your partner, you might as well be dating a sibling. I tried it for 9 years, even married the woman for the sake of the kids we had, but she has a very low drive and I did not. It felt like being trapped in a prison where I didn't get to be who I truly was. She eventually ended it because she didn't feel truly connected to me. I had to agree, though I would have stayed forever for the kids. We were not connected in the level of intimacy that true love requires. It was basically like living with a really good friend. So that's my deal breaker. Sorry if it offends you, but I want to share somebody's very soul, not just have a really good pal in my bed. Story 44. Relationship or dating? I can't even think about going on a date with someone that has a name that reminds me of a creepy old man. I won't name the names, but there's some pretty generic names that instantly make my thing turn into the Sahara. If they like wrestling or an amateur wrestler. I started talking to someone casually a few years ago, and he began sending me photos of him in a wrestling ring. Couldn't do it. Noped out of there. If they've never worked in the service industry, even for a little bit. The hospitality world is my life, and it would suck when they get annoyed by attending openings or parties with me and then get mad at me. Maybe a little snotty, but if they tell me they only eat burgers and normal foods and can't be an adventurous diner. I love tots as much as the next person, but there's so many textures and flavors that you're missing out on. Obviously, if there's some sort of dietary restriction, that's one thing. They have no desire to explore the world we live in. I've even cut off friendships with people that didn't understand why I traveled to different cities or countries and would get angry with me. They weren't even all USA. They just were comfortable. I'm not comfortable with people that are okay living complacently or very routine lives. Story 45. They don't use laundry detergent. They believe in the ancient alien theory. They make fun of my OCD. The way they eat disgusts me. Kinda not an unpopular opinion. Love and breathe, Rick and Morty. Lack of intimacy drive or creativity in the bedroom. Taking my freaking food. Screw off, Eli. Bothering me while I do my makeup. Using me as an armrest. I'm 5'2". Their living quarters aren't up to my standards of hygiene. This applies to the bathroom, too. Don't shower frequently enough, to my standards. Nosy. Just too gosh darn nosy. Quit asking me freaking questions. Talk incessantly in huge tangents, and it's a boring, unimportant story, and I couldn't care less. Sometimes silence is wonderful. Singing along to Lana Del Rey that's playing along in the background during intimacy. Stop. Not doing something around the house that I asked and with no real reason. Don't take their shoes off, or at least politely ask about it once entering my residence. Think it's funny to mercilessly tease me until I'm angry and crying because it wasn't funny, but I'm being a crybaby, and I'm butthurt because horrifically cruel jokes or comments are perfectly fine until I make one that isn't even remotely close to being as cruel. Story 46. Not having a career or aspirations for more in life than their minimum wage retail job. Basically anyone in retail. I've gone that path so many times and it's always been the same. They sit around blowing money they don't have, complaining about being poor or about how everyone at their job sucks and customers suck. Yet when you bring up doing something more, they just have no aspirations to do that. I'm not getting any younger, and listening to their silly gossip and constantly getting messed up on a Tuesday is not how I want to spend my time. I've gone to school, established myself in a career, and I expect someone who at least isn't working at the mall or the hairdressers anymore. Story 47. The woman who wants to be a stay-at-home wife. I respect everyone's choices. I grew up on a farm and my grandparents are amazing. Grandma being a farm wife, and I think there's nothing wrong with that life. I just know it doesn't work for me. It doesn't need to make crazy money. I don't care about that, but I like to be on the go and doing things, and I'm passionate about my career, and I just don't match well with someone who doesn't have a passion they're pursuing. If her passion is to be a stay-at-home mom, I fear the family dynamic will boil down to my thing being my career and her thing being our children, and that could marginalize me as a parent. Maybe it's an irrational fear, but I just can't do that dynamic. Story 48. If we can't have fun, just me and you in a room, no people, no activity, just being together in a room, entertaining each other, making each other laugh, just being comfortable sitting together or talking, then it ain't gonna last very long. Before I met my wife, I experienced this in a few different ways, and it was a very important lesson. One girl, when we weren't having intimacy, had nothing to say to each other. Like zero. Another was painfully annoying. Another was a 10, but man, was it stressful being around her. Always drama, mood swings, or plans about the next dinner with so-and-so. Barf. It was a relief when we broke up. And now, with my wife, we can just sit on the couch, say a few words to each, and be perfectly content. Story 49. Being with a late person. Someone who is always late to things. I'm an early person. I have a mild compulsion to be early whenever going somewhere. 5 to 10 minutes. Nothing too crazy. But if I'm late, even for something minor, it makes me experience pronounced anxiety. My ex is a late person. Can't wake up on time. Never gets anywhere on time. Always 5 to 30 minutes late for everything. Sometimes even more than that. And of course, she was utterly incapable of understanding that I cannot stand being late to things. I honestly think there were a few times she made us late to things on purpose just to see me squirm. This is not something that I will go through again. Story 50. Well, what I absolutely can't stand is when my partner gets mad because I didn't do something she never told me to do. For example, just recently I got blamed for not having cleaned the windows. I mean, yes, they actually are pretty dirty, but we rarely ever clean them at all. But for some reason, she thought they should get cleaned and got mad at me because I did not clean them. The point is, she never told me. Say a word and I'll gladly do it, but if not, then I won't clean them. Just same with cooking. I'm absolutely against the stereotypical woman is the one to cook, but my girl loves cooking, so she always does it. The problem is that sometimes there are days where she had a bad day and does not want to cook, and she gets mad because I didn't cook. My work ends 2 hours prior to hers. Just send me a freaking text and you will get a freaking 5-course candlelight dinner, which I still love her though. Story 51. Man hands. Horse people. Low talkers. Same outfit wearers back to back. A genetic stain in their front teeth. I'm not like other girls. All my exes are crazy. Poor responses to social situations. Anger issues. Feels entitled because they have money. High percent of disposable income and clothing. Has a pet they never clean up after, like cats. Grown person with dolls or other kid crap in their bed. Poor decision-making processes. Poor research ability for making better decisions, i.e. won't research what is a good car or has X problem with transmission. Inability to emotionally be open and discuss rational problems within the relationship. Always is never satisfied. To go to church just a bit too much. Or church at all. Story 52. I will give an answer that I really think lots of people wouldn't care about because, honestly, this thread is absolutely full of things most others would agree on. My first girlfriend did not have a favorite animal. She just did not care particularly for any animal at all. Now, I remained in that relationship for stupid reasons, and it wasn't the biggest deal breaker, but I really had and still have a problem with someone not having a favorite animal. Like, how? I need my partner to like my cat, man. The second relationship was allergic. Second deal breaker and second girlfriend, but maybe more people agree with this one. Allergies. Like, allergic to everything. Tomatoes, cats, glucose. Didn't want her freaking food to touch each other so she wouldn't eat sandwiches or hamburgers. I didn't believe half the crap she was allergic to. Also one of those people who had a certain food once in her life that she didn't like when she was a child and wasn't ever going to try again, even 15 years later. Story 53. Socks in bed. I don't give a crap if you're cold. Put on a blanket. Stick your feet under the dog. Whatever. Your socks have touched feet and have not yet been washed and they're freaking gross. Ideally, don't wear socks unless you're wearing shoes. Putting shoes on. Taking shoes off. Whatever. Don't walk around the house wearing just socks. Let your feet breathe, and if you have to go outside, then put on slippers or flip-flops. My roommate gets home from work, leaves his pants and socks on, and walks around the house like that. I don't understand it at all. God didn't invent gym shorts so you can wander around the house in jeans. Story 54. My first girlfriend. She was from a different religion. We had the exact opposite food habits. I was a vegetarian. Maybe 6 or 7 months into our relationship, I tried to make her comfortable by not having to order entirely different things when we went out to eat because it led to a couple of big fights like, what is the big deal? Everyone is eating it. What's the harm in trying? Started eating non-veg. I wasn't the biggest fan, but I tried to eat it every now and then. Fast forward to my birthday 2 years later. We went to a restaurant. I say I wanted to see how alcohol tastes. Tastes, not let's get hammered today. She goes, what the hell? You know, it's against my religion. Don't you ever think about ordering alcohol on this table? Fair enough. A few months later, I headed at some party and bam, she has a problem with that too. The last 2 birthdays were spent eating what I liked and getting buzzed. What's something you found out about your SO years into the relationship that made you reevaluate the whole relationship? He told me from the very get-go that he was diagnosed with Asperger's in grade school, but I just brushed it off because I know how many people who half-heartedly claim to be autistic. But a couple of weeks ago, I was lying in bed while he was putting away one of his 50 pocket watches in his holding box that he keeps in pristine condition, tucked away in a sock drawer. Then he proceeded to pick out a new axe to carry in his backpack full of supplies, and for some reason, it just hit me for the first true time that he's totally 100% of the spectrum. And it made me think back to the times when he had done things that absolutely infuriated me and had no idea he had done something wrong. Suddenly I could see that he wasn't being manipulative or underhanded. His brain simply works in a different way than mine, and he even tried to warn me of this. I just for some reason chose to disregard the information. He's super willing to meet me halfway. Even when he doesn't understand why something bothers me, he acknowledges how I feel and he stops doing it. He's the goofiest, most eccentric ball of love I have ever met, and coming to terms with his autism has made me love him all that much more. Story 2. My now wife and I both love musicals. Whenever we're in New York City, we catch a Broadway show. If a good show tours to our city, we catch it. On one date, I offhandedly told a story about when I performed in The Wizard of Oz in high school, and she froze, eyes wide. You performed in musicals? She asked. Yeah, I replied. Oh, I had no idea. This will take me a while to process. She was pretty quiet for about 20 minutes, then she said, okay, that's fine. I just never knew I was dating a guy who was in musicals. I never figured out why it threw her so much, but that was that and it never bothered her again. Story 3. She had been in contact with her exes, met them, and regularly cheated on me with whomever. 8 years. She was really good at hiding her tracks. I only found out because I contracted an STD. Curable, fortunately, from her. I was really glad we didn't have kids. I divorced her, moved away, and drank too much. Then I met the most awesome person in the world who I married, I had kids with, and didn't know relationships could be this good. Story 4. He started hearing voices. We've been together since we were 11, experiencing everything together. I love and accept everything about him. Shortly after we moved in together, he broke down. He told me he couldn't stand hearing voices anymore. They helped him see a doctor about it. They evaluated him and diagnosed him with stress. In his words, he's pretty freaking stressed about hearing voices. After a while, he started admitting to me that he's terrified of mirrors. Why? Because the people on the inside will take him away. We went back to the doctor. Again, they told him, "You don't want to be diagnosed with something bad. It's just stress." There's nothing left to do but keep bringing him back until they believe him. It doesn't help, and now he's convinced the doctors don't want him to get help. I can't really blame him for that. It was hard to adapt at first. I never would have pictured him going through such internal pain. The one thing that stood out to me was that he had spent so many years building my mental health up and doing anything he could to bring me out of depression. I had been so selfish for so long. How could I have not realized something was wrong? I was supposed to be the one person who knew him the most. Our relationship was imbalanced, and it was time for me to start picking up the slack. Ironically enough, we have an even stronger and healthier bond now. Story 5. She would lie about tiny, inconsequential things. It made me question my own perception of truth and self-instinct. Eventually, I caught her in a lie, and she denied it even when presented with full proof. It wasn't something huge, but it was something that opened my eyes a little. My friend swears I was being gaslit. Story 6. My wife and I have very few boundaries. Often, while we're having a conversation in a room, if one of us needs to use the bathroom, we'll just follow each other in and continue talking. If the conversation is good enough, poop won't hinder our dialogue. However, there are times when my wife is in the bathroom and locks the door. I always thought it was weird, but it didn't bother me. We've been married for 9 years now. We met at 15 and are now 28. We've grown up together, graduated together, traveled together. We know each other so well and have nothing to hide from one another. Or so I thought. This all changed one day. I was feeding our kids lunch and she was in the bathroom. Unbeknownst to her, she did not lock the door. When I walked in on her, I witnessed something that I never thought I would see. Something that lived in the back of my head, but I didn't think it could be real. My wife, of a 13-year relationship, 9 years of marriage, 3 kids together, was shaving her upper lip. She's Puerto Rican and has a little peach fuzz that you can't even really notice, but she was shaving it like it was a full-on mustache. She looked at me with this embarrassed look, and I thought to myself, what else is she hiding? I don't know that I'll ever look at her the same again. Story 7. Let me start by stating my wife has Asperger's. She didn't even know until we were married and we decided to tackle it together, but that wasn't what really shook me. 7 years into our marriage, a random conversation led to her revealing she never felt anything when we kissed. But she went along with it because she knew the importance of it as a romantic gesture. What the actual hell? I was flabbergasted, as our first kiss had left my lips tingling. To me, it was more than just the act. It was a genuine chemistry between us, but with her Asperger's, she couldn't process it that way. Hearing she went along with it because she knew it was supposed to mean something just broke my heart. Every single kiss suddenly felt like a lie, and I started questioning whether she actually loved me. It took months of therapy to reconcile and get reassurances that she did feel love. It wasn't just something she was assuming she should feel for me. It's been 4 years now, and we're still together. I've come to accept she just doesn't process her kisses the same way. Story 8. My wife and I married quickly without getting to know each other much. She was raised in a Mormon home, and I had converted to Mormonism at 18. We played the roles of provider and nurturer in our marriage, according to the teachings of the faith. I left the faith about 6 years ago. She stopped attending about 2 or 3 years ago. The very difficult conversations when I left made us talk about things more than we ever had before. We dove deeply into so many aspects of her life, marriage, and desires for the future. I realized after years of marriage that she was actually an incredibly smart, dynamic woman. I loved her a lot before this. I always thought she was amazing, but because of the dynamics of each of her upbringings and the dynamic of the faith, I never realized how intelligent she was. I ask her opinion on things all the time now. We left our faith, ditched most of our baggage from our sexist upbringings, and I realized how great of a lifelong companion I have, and I'm ecstatic about it. Story 9. When I had my first child, the pregnancy wasn't a surprise or an accident. We talked and planned. I got a little overbearing during the pregnancy, like insisting on breastfeeding even without discussing it with me. I put it down to new dad nerves and not knowing any better. Turns out, that was only the tip of the iceberg. He believed that children were completely and totally a wife's responsibility. He wouldn't change a diaper. He wouldn't pick up the baby when it cried. No way would he get up in the middle of the night. He expected me to work a full-time job plus do all the childcare. At that point, I was confused and appalled, but I told myself we just needed time to adjust. I realized how delusional I was when the baby got sick while he was on a fishing trip. The doctors thought the baby had meningitis, so not just sick, but life-threatening sick. I called and asked him to come home. He refused. He paid for the 2 more days of fishing and didn't want to lose the money. Story 10. A little over a year after being officially together, I finally realized that she had a cancer gene in her family. Despite being crazy in love with her, this made me want to back out because I completely saw a future with her. Her grandpa and dad both had head and neck cancers, and 2 aunts and 1 uncle were survivors of ovarian and lung cancer. I knew I wanted kids, and she did too, so there was always this looming fear that our future kids might inherit it. Still, I went through with it because she mattered more to me than all my fears combined. Life plays a cruel joke, and despite having no vices and being only an occasional drinker, she got the big C as well. Head and neck, just like her grandpa and her dad. I lost her a little over a year ago. Still, no regrets. I still love her a lot. Story 11. 7 years into our relationship, and after having been married a year, my husband finally told me he was essayed by his older brother. It really threw the struggles of our intimate life into perspective. Knowing this now, I've done all kinds of research, found how to support victims' information, and I've changed how I behave. We're working on it. I tell him every time we're intimate that intimacy is an act of love and he's safe with me. We also have our safe word for general use if he's feeling overwhelmed. I truly think we're making progress. Things are better now. He's starting to understand that intimacy equals love in a marriage, and I want him to want me. I even want him to be a little controlling when he feels up to it, among other things. He's grown a lot. He's a very strong person, and I'm immeasurably lucky to have him. Story 12. She told me when we first met that she was broken as she suffers from depression. I didn't brush it off, so to speak, but kind of just thought, yeah, whatever, it won't be that bad. It's not because I don't think depression is serious, but I just never, ever been in contact with someone with depression, so I kind of had no idea what it entails, if that makes sense. 5.5 years of being together later, and holy crap, depression is just super serious. I've been in situations I never imagined being in because of her and her depression. She's phoned me up twice while she was working in London. I live 60 miles away in Kent, saying she loves me, she's sorry, and she's going to end it. What do I do? I don't know what to do. Thankfully, both of those times she never went ahead with it, but still ended up in the hospital, and obviously I went up to her. Sometimes she's just crying and crying and crying and crying. Countless visits to the GP for talks and medication. Again, things I've never dealt with before, and at first, I was extremely uncomfortable about it all. The this isn't for me kind of thoughts. But the good news is, she's part of my life now. I don't mind all of the above anymore. She loves me, and I love her. What's even more amazing is that I'm the one that keeps her going, she says. This is life. I'm fully aware of the seriousness of depression. Story 13. He's a hopeless romantic. For the first year and a half of our relationship, he kind of kept me at arm's length emotionally. I always felt he had more power in our relationship because I fell in love early and was more demonstrative and gushy and yearny. While he seemed more measured and in control of his feelings for me than I could muster. Well, we've been married just over 3 years now, and I've discovered he has the heart of a poet. He's far more demonstrative and sappy and romantic than I ever was. I actually discovered this before we got married, a little while after we moved in together when he revealed he loved me too. But even now, after some years together, he'll make an effusive declaration about how beautiful he finds me or how much he adores me. It catches me by surprise and dazzles me, leaving me both breathless and speechless. It hasn't made me question our relationship, but it still blows me away how much he blossomed in our relationship, and the way he shares with me a side of himself that wasn't very apparent for a long time. And every time I think of it and blush a little, thinking about how wonderfully silly he is about ordinary little old me, it further cements my conviction that I am the luckiest woman in the world. Story 14. I knew what time and even where she was when she logged into any of my social accounts. Not once did I ever bring it up in our 13-month relationship. However, I was always curious how she knew my password and why she always accessed my accounts. I had nothing to hide though, so I didn't mind. One day, somehow, we got into a conversation where she said she had caught me in some lies. I'm not sure what she was talking about, but my life is a little unusual, so I believe her that I may have told a few white lies at the beginning of the relationship. I then asked, "Have you ever lied to me?" She replied, "No." I followed up with, "Have you ever gone onto any of my personal stuff without my permission?" She said, "No, I don't even know your passwords to your accounts except your phone." That made me curious what else she was lying about. Story 15. Married 22 years. I found out this past weekend that my husband had decided we were at the pinnacle of our lives. We have a nice house, jobs, paid off cars, and so on. His goals now are to stay home and not at work and play a golf game or Fortnite from now on. He has no interest in travel or new experiences. He just wants to stay at home and play video games for the rest of his life. Now it sounds like most people's dream life, but it's certainly not mine. I want to go and do. I want to have amazing experiences and meet people. He's only 47 and has pretty much decided to become a hermit. Story 16. I found out 2 years into our marriage that he had lied to me about sleeping with other women when we'd first begun to date, including his ex. I had no expectations for developing a relationship at the time, but I did ask him to be honest with me if he was active with anyone else. I guess he didn't believe that I wanted honesty, so he never said anything. He was also drinking excessively. I didn't see him often enough to realize that. It wasn't until later on that I saw how much he was spending on alcohol and going out, but I was paying to keep his cell phone turned on so that we could talk long distance. I ended up in counseling because I didn't want to just walk out, but I felt so betrayed to learn all of this so long after I'd committed to him. Story 17. After about a year of being officially together, my now fiance said that his mother was at fault for being in a cruel relationship with her boyfriend and let herself be harmed. It made it sound like it was her fault the boyfriend harmed her. I was so taken aback by this victim blaming that I couldn't talk to him for the next hour or so, reevaluating everything this sweet, caring man had said so far. So I sat him down and we talked this through. Funny enough, when I asked him whether he thought it was my fault that I had been on public transport, he said, definitely not. He accepted that it was not his mother's fault and has been kinder to her since. Story 18. He often had intimate dreams about almost every single guy he knew, and since he talked in his sleep, it was very easy to tell. I didn't realize it until about 4 months into our year-long relationship. It started with him having an intimate dream about his ex, which didn't really bother me because they had a history. Then about a month later, he had one about his RA, and there were a few other people he had dreams about. Finally, one day a few weeks before we broke up, he had an extreme intimate dream about his straight college roommate. Normally, he'd just say the person's name and stuff, but during this dream, I woke up to him calling me his roommate's name. I had to pull him off myself quite a few times before he finally stopped. Story 19. Seriously, I found out he was an alcoholic. We were already married and had children. When we were in our 20s, we drank at parties and we both got intoxicated, but not too crazy unless the people or place warranted it. And of course, we drank casually with friends or at dinner sometimes, but nothing that would make me think he had a problem. Finally, I realized one day that it seemed like I'd get home from work and he'd be intoxicated, but there were no visible signs of drinking, like a glass out or a booze bottle anywhere. I became concerned when I thought maybe he was coming home from work, drinking, and then going to pick up the kids. Finally, he told me that he'd been doing a lot of drinking alone and was lying and hiding the bottles and the fact that he was drinking. Now he just doesn't drink at all. He slips every once in a while under anxiety and duress, and it's an issue, but we're working through it. I knew I needed to be there for him, but at the same time, I was really surprised how sad I was. I sort of had to grieve the fact that I couldn't drink with my husband anymore, and I wasn't sure if I could drink around him. We couldn't share wine at dinner or have champagne at New Year's. We couldn't get margaritas on the beach or buy beers to watch the game. It was really, really sad. Story 20. We were watching a Guess That Song video in bed one night and the song YMCA played. She asked who sang that. I laughed it off, but she doubled down. My wife didn't know who the Village People were. I should have seen the signs that she was some crazy alien posing as human just to take over the world. I guess the first time would have been when she asked for a bite of my burger and then immediately bit the wrong side. Not the side I had a few bites from, but the completely opposite side. We had already been dating for a good 9 years at this point, so it wasn't a cootie thing. She's a freaking monster. Story 21. I've always wanted kids, but I've always been nervous about the idea. Like, when do I do it? What if I'm bad at it? Will I miss my freedom? 3 years into my relationship with my fiance, we were at a cookout and there was a little 7-year-old girl there. He was running around playing with her, being goofy, playing tag, and he was just so good with her. It occurred to me I'd never seen him interact with a child before. It lit up in such an amazing way, and that's when I realized I absolutely want to have kids with this dude. Story 22. After several years together, my ex told me nonchalantly one evening that he stole $500 from one of his best friends because he really needed it. This ex was a college-educated person trying to get into dental, medical, or pharmacy school. Not only was there no reason for this person to steal their friend's money, but I didn't understand how someone could do that and feel no remorse whatsoever, especially towards someone they considered a good friend. It was at that moment that I seriously began to believe I'd given my trust and love to a total sociopath. It was the catalyst that pushed me out of the relationship. I found out later that while I was working on a degree in another city, he found dates on Tinder, spinning lies about being in med school and owning a luxury condo overlooking the Wisconsin state capitol. He'd take girls for rides on my motorcycle and bring them back to the condo I owned. I don't know who or how many, but a neighbor specifically went out of their way to tell me what was going on. One of his Tinder dates was with a good friend's best friend, and I heard through her the lies about being rich and working in medicine. A high school classmate of his texted me to warn me of the same things. He hit on a girl at a reunion by saying he was in med school at Wisconsin, but the girl was actually in med school at Wisconsin and promptly told everyone about the exchange. When I went to kick him out of the condo, he told me that his mother had turned into a raging alcoholic and that kicking him out would mean he couldn't take care of her anymore. He stole a whole bunch of stuff from me, some of which he still has, and after all of it, he had the gall to text and ask if he could manage my finances for me at his new job in, believe it or not, wealth management. I guarantee you he's not stealing from every one of his clients, but when he said he stole from his friend, it really changed my opinion that he wasn't just an insecure millennial trying to find his way between college and the real world. He's a Class A raging narcissist, and holy crap am I glad he's out of my life forever. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 23. I worked as a street worker throughout college. He knew that way before we started dating and said it didn't bother him. Then about a year into the relationship, we were about to move in with each other. Around that same time, we went to a camping trip with our friends, about 4 other people. The 2 of us took our car and our friends drove up separately. The whole ride up to our camping spot, about 2.5 hours away, he was dismissive and didn't say a word. Even when I asked him questions, he would just be silent or give a one-word response. The camping trip was over 3 days and he didn't speak to me. I kept trying to pull him away from our friends to find out what the heck was going on, why he wouldn't interact with me, he wouldn't give me an answer. I cried every night because I would watch him interact with our friends all day and then we'd go to our tent and he'd completely ignore me. Finally, on the ride home, I freaked out and told him to pull the car over because I was getting out and finding another way home if he didn't tell me what the heck was going on. He pulled over in some random parking lot and was quiet for a few minutes. He then told me about how he found it disgusting that I was a street worker and that every time he looked at me, he felt disgusted. Okay? What? Somehow all of a sudden this bothers you and you out of nowhere decide to act on these feelings by ignoring me without explanation? Made no sense. Eventually we talked it through and for some stupid freaking reason, I forgave him. We moved in together and things just got worse. Anytime there was a problem they wanted to talk about, he'd lock himself in the bathroom or he'd get in his car and drive off and disappear for hours or sometimes until the next day. He'd yell at me for really absurd things. He was stressed out all the time. Then at our 2-year mark, he went and bought a chiropractic business without consulting me. I was expecting me to be excited for him, that he got his own business now and have his own practice. I feigned excitement and he could probably sense it wasn't genuine. He got mad about that too, but deep down I knew that the added stress of the new business would mean things would just get worse. He would be more stressed out and we would be broke. I'd have to pay all our bills while we got things up and running in a steady patient base. Plus all the time I'd have to spend helping him fix up the business, painting, buying furniture, setting up a new network, etc. I was already working 60 plus hours a week at the time. Plus it meant we'd have to move closer to his new business. When he started yelling at me for not being excited for him, I tried explaining how selfish it was to make a huge decision like this without even thinking about how it would change my life. 6 months after opening his business, it got to the point where I just didn't want to go home. Every time we were home together, he'd be upset for some reason or another, and it got to the point that I was having panic attacks nearly every day. Right before we broke up, his dad told me that when my ex was in high school, he had to see an anger management counselor because of his outbursts, and his psychologist told his parents that he was likely a sociopath. Well, I guess I'd have to agree. Story 24. He's a massive mama's boy, in an unhealthy and weird way. Too much has happened to really get specific, but it's ranged from her inviting him to a sunset dinner on the beach to her adjusting his t-shirt when we saw her in the store the other day. He's 22 and hasn't lived at home for a bit over 6 months at this point. He refuses to see it and she can do no wrong in his eyes. If I say anything at all, I'm accusing him of sleeping with his mother. Frankly, I'm still trying to decide if I want to be with him anymore. I can't marry him with this, so I'm not sure if I should keep the relationship going or count my losses and try to move on. Story 25. 15 years after the fact, I found out he had lied about the intimate nature of certain friendships of his. Adamantly, repeatedly, and steadfastly, and it wasn't of any consequence or beneficial for him to lie. In fact, it would have very helpfully explained at the time why these particular friends did things like sit on his lap, flirting and giggling very comfortably or intoxicatedly dialed so frequently, or sent really weirdly romantic birthday cards. The fact that he'd been so adamant about the whole thing being a misunderstanding on my part and then years later tell me the real truth in passing, during a random conversation, under the auspices that I couldn't have handled it at the time, just made me question everything about his approach to the truth. Namely that it felt like it was up to him to shape it as it suited him. That's not how truth works, dude. Ultimately, our entire relationship was revealed to be a house of cards stacked on a hot, wobbly pile of BS. I'm pretty sure the first time I saw him truly cry real tears was when the judge told him how much he owed me in our divorce settlement. Story 26. I once dated a girl who I'm convinced had a severe case of Munchausen syndrome. She told me she was paranoid, an amnesiac, and schizophrenic at various points in our relationship. She, probably falsely, claimed her mother was cruel and her father was an alcoholic, and since they were divorced, I recommended she ask one or the other to take full custody, but she never made any effort toward this. She also faked the list for the first month of our relationship and denied ever having done so once she let it slip and talked normally. The final straw was when I heard from a friend of hers that she had claimed to have been coerced into doing substances by me. Story 27. For years, she pestered me for a puppy, even though we lived in a one-bedroom apartment. We had opposite schedules where I worked at the office during the day and she had a night shift as a server, so after a bit of convincing, I figured it would all work out as he would never be alone for too long. And we could always take him out for walks. So I got her the puppy she wanted, a puggle. Turns out she never walked him and barely took him out to potty. Within a year, our carpet was a nice shade of yellow and I would constantly find poop under our couch and behind furniture. Basically, she just wanted a living stuffed animal that she could show off but didn't need to take care of. We broke up shortly after. I lost a large security deposit due to the damage. She didn't want anything to do with the dog anymore, and my new living situation didn't allow for dogs, so we had to put him up for adoption. He went to a great family, but it still stings to this day that I couldn't give the little guy the life he deserved. Story 28. I found out he's gay. He married late in life. It was my second marriage and his fourth, or so I thought. Another long story. He eventually stopped having intimacy and had a lot of excuses, which made my self-esteem plummet. To make a long story short, I found gay corn in his computer, then got into his computer and found chats, etc. I confronted him, and it was confirmed. I found a support group for mixed orientation marriages, and we've now got an open marriage. We both date guys, lol. We're best friends, sharing a home and life together. It's not what I expected to be living, but most of life is that way. I'm lucky. Many women find out while the kids are still at home or after 30 years of marriage. I've been married 7 years, and I'm really open-minded when it comes to stuff like sexuality and lifestyles. Actually, he's the lucky one. Lol. Story 29. She often told me stories about her old clique in her hometown, and a lot of those were rather problematic for my taste. In the sense of, you spend time with these people? Willingly? In and of itself, that wasn't that big of a deal because we all have history and we all did some dumb stuff in our youth. But then I started connecting some dots. A certain guy who featured heavily in the worst stories, basically if everything she said was true, an individual with a history of SA and concerning tendencies who kept getting away with it because the clique kept covering for him every time someone threatened to call the cops. Had also been a regular on and off FWB verse. Okay. So you knowingly, for years, were intimate with a guy who should be in prison for preying on multiple individuals, including close acquaintances. Great. Now you repulse me, but all right. The past and all that. I know you've had issues. Give me a couple days and some strong alcohol and I'd get over it. But then, hey, you seem to get along great with X at my birthday party. I thought you hated him. You can't be shocked that I spent time with the guy and then get along with him yourself. Why would I hate him? I don't know, but oh, for goodness sake. Yeah, okay. No, that's enough. That's not past mistakes. That's ongoing foolishness. As far as I know, she at least didn't sleep with the guy or anyone else while we were together, but that's too far. I don't care if it makes me a control freak. The fact that you still think hanging out with Mr. Problematic when you visit your hometown is a good idea makes you, at the very least, a complete idiot, and also despicable. I had to acknowledge that either she was making up horrific stories for fun, or her old clique was completely and utterly made up of complete subhumans and she still spent time with him. Other than her fabricating elaborate stories, other highlights included her best friend who kept trying to get her to cheat on me, lots of alcohol and bringing along new friends to her home when I was out, whenever she herself was single, which was unsurprisingly a regular occurrence, that thoughtless individual, the odd violent, intoxicated, and plenty more. At some point, if everyone you know is some variety of problematic, I can't help but question what that says about me. I couldn't help it. I dealt with a lot of her issues for years, but when all of that fell into place, it damaged my feelings for her irreparably. I still loved her, but I was completely unable to muster up any inkling of respect for or trust in her after that. That's not the kind of relationship I want to be in. Story 30. Her father, who is a doctor and the sole provider for her family, building the incredible house they all still lived in, needed a kidney 10 years ago and asked her mother, who said no, passed away soon after for want of said kidney, having had his wife turn her back on him. This was all explained to me as though there was nothing wrong with the story. And then all of the arguing about things that she didn't understand and all of the selfishness reached a moment of perfect clarity, and I decided that I have to get the hell out of here. Story 31. It didn't make me reevaluate, but it was an eye-opener for sure. We were on a cruise vacation shore excursion and went snorkeling in the Dominican Republic. We jumped off the boat into about 20 feet of water, equipped with fins, mask, and snorkel gear. I'd snorkeled ages ago, and I'm a fairly strong swimmer, so I headed straight to the bottom to look around. After a few seconds, I realized she was nowhere to be seen, so I went back up to find her thrashing around like a small blonde bobber in rough seas. She said something about not feeling well because she had accidentally swallowed a bunch of water through the snorkel. I helped her back in the boat and sat her down. She was looking a bit green around the gills, but she seemed okay and waved me off, telling me to get back in the water. So off I went, thinking she'd join me when she felt better. She never got back in, saying she didn't feel well. We returned from our vacation, and 3 weeks later we were kind of rehashing the snorkeling incident. A light bulb valiantly struggled and finally lit up in my head. After 30 plus years with her, I never knew she really didn't know how to swim. Story 32. I didn't have much to do with my ex's parents for the first few years. This changed after we were married, and I discovered that she was basically a psychological carbon copy of her father. And I, her mother. The only problem with that was, her father was a domineering man who wore his wife down over many years to the point where she was basically mute and offered no resistance to him. What he wanted, he got. My ex was already showing a tendency to bully me into supplication, and I realized I was heading down the same path as her mother. I had already started giving up trying to argue about anything with her. I saw my future quite clearly one day and left. Story 33. We had been married 8 years when he was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer and wasn't expected to make it past a year. I doubled down on my love for him and jumped into the exhausting and thankless role of being his caregiver. Made it a week past 3 years and passed away 7 weeks ago. I wouldn't change a thing except to go back and love him more, sooner, be more selfless, and take that damn vacation to Hawaii with him. I'll be bringing his ashes instead. This might not be what you were asking for, but it sure did cause me to reevaluate things and my role in a relationship. Story 34. I'm not sure if this is relevant to the question, but I'll share my story. She was my first girlfriend. I was 23, she was 19. First mistake. Anyway, my apartment had mold, so I moved in with her and her friends. They rented a house with 3 of her friends. Someone who used to live there was a dealer, but higher up than most kids. 3 people with guns broke into the house at 3 a.m. They pulled us out of the bed and threw us onto the bathroom while they robbed the place, looking for substances they thought were there. I had $1,500 worth of stuff stolen. Honestly, it really messed me up emotionally. Started to have PTSD symptoms. I told my girlfriend that I was struggling. She said she was there for me and she loved me. A week later, she starts cheating on me with a coworker. One night, I'm sleeping in her bed waiting for her to come home, but she never does. A few months of this BS followed, with her saying nothing was happening and that they were just friends, but they kissed before, no big deal. I took her on vacation to kind of start fresh. A day or 2 after being home, she starts hanging out with him again. She interestingly buys a few pairs of garments after hanging out with him. Whatever. She smelled like rubbers, which we didn't use. Blamed it on new garment smell. She then tells me she's going hiking with another male coworker, a different one. I said, cool, have fun, just don't drink with him because it leads to bad things. I wasn't backing down. Of course she ends up at a bar with him. I go to said bar and publicly and loudly break up with her. She spent the night at his place. She comes to my place the next day crying and begging me to take her back. I do. We have intimacy, then I realized all the time she cheated. I end it. She tells me nothing ever happened and I'm overreacting. I went through 2 years of hell, depression, hard substance use, super insecure after going through a hell of a first relationship. Then 3 years later, we somehow reconnect as we go to the same gym. She then tells me that she slept with a dude at the bar the night I broke up with her, hours before we had intimacy. Yeah, thank God I listened to my inhibitions and didn't continue to hurt myself by being with that cheating, lying, game-playing person. Story 35. She had cheated on me within hours of asking her out. We had been going out and spending time together for about a month. She really wanted to be in a relationship and I was a little on the fence, but we were having fun and I did like her, so I brought it up. She jumped for joy and seemed so happy that I had finally asked her out. Well, come to find out, she had a date set up after our date. No big deal, she was single and I had to go to bed early for work that day, but after our date, she was no longer single. And she went to that date and slept with that guy just a couple of hours after we decided to start a relationship. She kept this from me for about 5.5 years and then confessing it, along with something else she did that I don't blame her for. But this hurt. It was so long ago, we were completely different people then, but it still stung. After that, I tried to make it work, but it knocked off the rose-tinted glasses and I started to see all things that didn't work with us. It wasn't long after that when I knew I had to end it. Story 36. I've shared a lot of bad stories, but now I want to share my positive one. We had been together for 2 years and I was going through a deep depression. I thought that no one cared and I only saw the bad in people, including my girlfriend. I was seriously thinking of leaving her and just being alone forever. Later that day, I was in my bed, staring at the ceiling, and she came home. She had work that day. When I asked her why she wasn't at work, she told me that she had asked for a day off just to stay with me. She prepared hot chocolate and bought my favorite cookies. We just sat there, having hot chocolate and cookies and watching some Doctor Who, my favorite show. That day, I understood that she did care, more than everyone else. That day, I decided to marry her. My depression is mostly gone thanks to her, and just the thought that I was about to leave her because of my depression, man, I'm a very lucky man. Story 37. 6 years into our relationship, I learned that she stopped loving me roughly 2-ish years in and just faked the rest of it. She kept me around because I was able to fix almost everything in her family's house and was willing to build things for her when she needed props for the team she coached for Halloween. That, and I was willing to wake up at 4 a.m., drive my happy ass from Orange County to San Francisco and then back in the same day to pick her up and make sure she was at her college campus for a midterm she had. Before I had learned about all of this, I paid for 3/4 of a 9-day trip to Orlando so that I could potentially propose. I didn't have enough money for the ring, so I decided to wait and just enjoy the trip. Got home, and about 4 hours after landing, she decided to unload her secret on me. I felt beyond used. We broke up. I bought myself a $400 bottle of scotch, a few cigars, and a new tattoo. I picked up and left California for Arizona and haven't looked back since. Story 38. Not sure if this counts exactly, but I was hanging out with an ex-girlfriend. Amicable breakup. Possibly a couple of years after we dated. I initiated the breakup. I thought she was boring or something, but really I was just immature. Anyway, she happened to casually mention that she once had her poem published in the child-oriented magazine Highlights. Perhaps you remember it being in every pediatrician's waiting room in the 70s. I'm dating myself. When she told me that she was not only a self-published poet, but got into Highlights, my childhood favorite magazine, I totally regretted breaking up with her. Remember, kids, don't be a goofus. Be a gallant. Story 39. Over the last couple of years, she's become increasingly frustrated with Western medicine. A lot of it stems from more and more doctors only wanting to treat symptoms and not try to address the underlying root of people's problems. I can't really argue with her there. There does seem to be a trend in modern medicine to get people in and out of the door as quickly as possible. So she's been exploring other options. Chiropractors, though she seems to have given that up. Alternative diets, etc. I'm fine with anything that's not a ton of money or too radical. So far, it's just resulted in us eating more salad and less lectins or whatever. The other day, she did mention that one of these diets claims to have cured cancer. I told her in no uncertain terms that if any of us got cancer, we'd be receiving actual medically sound treatment, and she would have to literally end me to stop it. If she did manage to end me, I would come back and haunt her, which should carry even more weight since I don't believe in ghosts. What's an early sign that the relationship isn't going to work? In my last relationship, after a couple of months, I noticed that my boyfriend gradually stopped laughing at my jokes, memes, and humor. He always had to one-up me, even if his joke wasn't better. Eventually, he stopped acknowledging my humor at all. That's when I realized he was so insecure that he felt he had to be the only funny one. We'd been friends for 3 years before we started dating and used to have so much fun together. But when I became his girlfriend, he suddenly saw me as competition and made it his mission to make me feel smaller. Story 2. They don't want to hang out as much as you do. They don't answer your texts for days and they play stupid little mind games. The texting issue is a big one. It's a hill I'm willing to go away on. People love to say that they're just busy, don't like texting, or that it's just their personality, but that's never true. All the men in my life who just wanted to keep me around but not really engage were men who needed 2 days to reply to a simple text. No one is that busy. And if they are, it takes 10 seconds to say so. Leaving someone on red for days in the middle of a conversation where you're online all the time is a clear sign of a lack of real interest. Don't get me wrong, I hate texting all the time, but I never let anyone wait 2 or 3 days for a response. Story 3. It really depends on your intentions. If you pursue someone just to satisfy your ego, not because of a real connection, the relationship usually doesn't last more than 3 months. I've seen people chase others just for validation, and once they get what they want, the effort disappears. That's not love, that's ego. But for those who start with a genuine understanding, honesty, and no pretenses, that kind of connection can actually last. Thanks for the post. Made me realize I'm still single. Lol. Story 4. I took a girl on a date to an apple orchard once. It was our second or third date, and it ended up being a bit of a disaster. It was a little later in the season, so most of the good apples were gone, but it was a nice day, and I set it up mostly so we could spend some time together without our phones or any technology. She spent the entire time complaining and moping about how we had missed peak apple season. Story 5. You're envisioning a future with someone who has traits your current partner doesn't display. You might hope to see these traits or believe they're just below the surface. However, they never materialize as you invest more time and energy into a relationship that isn't meeting your needs in the present, all while you keep thinking that one day you will. Story 6. A disagreement about what constitutes a crisis can be a sign of a bad relationship. This doesn't matter if one partner freaks out over something minor or if the other acts like everything is fine when the world is burning down. The objective truth doesn't matter. What's important is how each partner perceives the other's reaction. An inability to meet in the middle is a clear indication of mismatched values. Story 7. Different life goals. If you and your partner have different ideas about how you want to live your lives, it may be time to reconsider the relationship. This includes major life goals like marriage, having children, or travel, as well as smaller day-to-day things. Awkward silences. When silences feel awkward instead of comfortable, it can be a sign of a bad relationship. Manipulative or controlling behavior. If either person shows early signs of being manipulative or controlling, you should be wary. This behavior is always small at first. Me versus you mentality. If they frame an argument as me versus you instead of us versus the problem, it's a major red flag. Inability to apologize. If your partner cannot apologize correctly and take ownership of their mistakes, it's a problem. We're all human and mistakes are going to happen. Story 8. When someone refuses to change even a minor flaw for you, especially when you're trying to introduce them to your family, it's a problem. I was once with a girl I was very fond of, but she had the dirtiest, most vulgar way of speaking. Would have made a sailor blush. She was like a Chinese version of Andrew Dice Clay who never stopped saying bad words. I wanted to bring her home to meet my parents, so I gently and politely asked her not to get intoxicated and start shouting in Chinese bad words after an hour or two. She literally refused to acknowledge that our public language and behavior were rude, so I eventually broke up with her over it. She even dialed me intoxicatedly a couple of times over the years, randomly saying, "I love you," in the middle of the night. But she never stopped saying bad words so much, and that was something I would not force my family to endure, so we never seriously got back together. Story 9. If their friends don't like you, it could be a sign of a bad relationship. Your friends likely share similar values and may see your partner from a clearer perspective than you do. It's often only a matter of time before the initial spark fades and you realize their friends were right all along. Furthermore, if a problem arises between you, your partner will likely be bombarded with messages from their friends telling them to end the relationship. The same is true if your friends don't like your partner. Story 10. If your relationship is based solely on lust and charm, it will fall apart pretty quickly once that initial passion fades. Emotional support is the glue that holds a relationship together. When you understand this, it's like a superpower when dealing with women. Most men don't realize how big of a deal emotional support is because they tend to focus more on physical connection, while women care most about the emotional connection. Trust me, boys, figuring this out will greatly improve your relationships. Story 11. Unwillingness to work on themselves. If either person is unwilling to work on their own issues, the relationship won't last. Disregarding boundaries. A partner who consistently disregards their boundaries is a major red flag. Toxic comments. If they say toxic things like, "What, you think you're better than me?" Yeah, it's a major red flag for an unhealed emotional wound, even if they're being sarcastic. Words don't match actions. If their words don't match their actions, it's time to leave. Assuming the worst. If they build up resentment or dislike toward you based on a wrong assumption, refuse to ask for clarification and defend their way of thinking, they are doomed to repeat that behavior. Lack of respect or dishonesty. A lack of respect on either side will end a relationship. Dishonesty is another clear indicator of a lack of respect. Lack of communication. If either person refuses to acknowledge an issue and work on it, the relationship is unlikely to succeed. Incompatibility. If you're incompatible, for example, if you have a lack of desire for each other or different views on having children, the relationship won't work. Downplaying accomplishments. If they downplay your accomplishments, you should probably get out of that relationship. Story 12. An early sign of a bad relationship is when someone becomes defensive the moment you express hurt or confusion, instead of showing curiosity about what you're feeling. I was talking to a guy who said he really liked me, but anytime I gently opened up about feeling disconnected or unsure, he would respond by justifying his behavior instead of trying to understand my feelings. It became clear that he wasn't actually interested in getting to know me, only in protecting his own comfort. If someone can't make space for your feelings early on, it only gets harder later. Story 13. I once had a friend I talked to online. He was from Missouri and I was from Las Vegas. We met in a music group on Facebook and he kept asking me to come to Missouri to meet him. I honestly thought the guy should be the one to travel to meet the girl if he was serious. But the time we finally met, he acted so strangely. He knew my mom and my brother and he told me that if I wanted to take things further, I would have to get rid of my mom. If people don't have a good relationship with their own parents to the point where they tell me to get rid of mine, it's not going to work out. Story 14. I once dated this girl who discussed one of the other guys she was seeing, one of her friends. I was only 19 at the time, so I was completely ignorant as to what was really happening. Basically, a more involved friends with benefits situation. She was a little older than I was, but she had much more worldly experience, so I was way over my head. We didn't date for long, but she accidentally taught me some important lessons about valuing my time and energy. I then took those lessons and completely ignored them for the next decade. Story 15. He worries about his ex-wife too much. He'd often say, "I can't go anywhere, I have kids all the time." Yet he has 2 kid-free weekends a month and she usually agrees to take them. I think he was just playing the victim, with a poor me attitude about his wife cheating on him and him having the kids most of the time because she can't. Meanwhile, his ex would go on trips and he couldn't believe it. She'd buy something new and he'd complain to me and I'd just say, "Cool, sounds like fun." Story 16. The minute you're picking up his laundry or you begin taking on duties of a maid, he shushes you when you're trying to tell a story. He treats you differently when his friends are around. He's constantly calling and texting when you're trying to work or study or do whatever. He has a bizarre attachment to his mother. His reason for divorce is that it's his ex-wife's fault. He has given up custody of his children. He's behind on child support. He has a massive amount of debt beyond student loans and is not paying his student loans. He has an alcohol, substance, or porn fixations. Story 17. If you're already in couples therapy and you haven't hit the 6-month mark yet, that's an early sign of a bad relationship. I once knew a couple like this. It was a rampantly bisexual, polyamorous man, and she was on the lesbian side of possibly bisexual. He was her first male partner. They were in therapy because she was having a hard time accepting that he was polyamorous, even though he had been open about it from the start. He was struggling with trying to be monogamous for her, especially since she had said that she was fine with him being non-monogamous. She was not, in fact, fine with it. It wasn't their respective intimate inclinations that made the whole situation a mess. Both were queer in their own ways, and that was fine. The problem was they were both trying to force a relationship that was never going to work because, ultimately, she was monogamous and he was not. There's not something therapy was going to fix. They were fundamentally incompatible. Story 18. You don't need to change someone to love them. If you truly love someone, you won't care so much about them having a minor habit like smoking cigarettes and a little here and there. However, with bigger things like fixations, you need to give them time. Be there to support them on their journey to recovery, but be prepared. It takes time and doesn't happen overnight. If they relapse, don't be angry. Encourage them to get rid of what they have and try again. It often takes multiple attempts. People who are fixated just need love, encouragement, and support. Most of all, they need to be helped in replacing their unhealthy habits with healthier ones. At the end of the day, no user is proud of being one. They all want to quit, but they often don't have a support person to help them because most of the time, family and close friends give up on them very quickly. And all they know is that behavior because that's all they're around now and that everyone else has dropped off the face of the earth. If you've never been fixated, you'll never truly understand the roller coaster of feelings, emotions, anxiety, body sweats, and withdrawals. That feeling like your body has been shocked and jolted a little. Be patient, be understanding, and most of all, be there to support them for the long haul. It will be worth it, not only for the user, but for you as well, because you were there to help them all the way. I understand this can be hard on the person who isn't fixated. I've been on both sides of the fence. It's It's draining, emotional, intense, and depressing, and it definitely takes a toll on you, but I truly believe that if you want to help someone, you'll be there until the end. Story 19. Lol. These comments alone make me laugh. On the inside, humor is like beauty. Perception is everything. What's funny to me might not be to the next person. It all depends on the context. To the dozens of men who talk about the eye rolls and contempt, how much messed up stuff did you inflict on her while she sat in misery before she shut you out? There isn't anything you can say that will be funny because you're still a cheating, lying schmuck. Even if you're not cheating, you try to make her feel like you are because you're so insecure that you want someone else to be punished with you. When she finally can't take it anymore, you wonder why she doesn't laugh at your corny jokes, especially when you never had a personality and literally survived off all her sunshine. Story 20. I think one of the biggest early signs that things might not work is when you can't laugh together anymore. A sense of humor, especially in tough moments, is huge in a relationship. If you find yourselves getting irritated or annoyed at small jokes, or if it feels like you're on totally different wavelengths, it can be a major red flag. Life is full of ups and downs, and when you can't laugh at the little things or support each other through awkward or tough moments, that's when you know something's off. Being able to joke, even about the stupid things, helps you stay connected when things get heavy. I honestly believe laughter is the glue that holds a relationship together. If you can't have fun with each other, what do you even have? Story 21. Arguing within the first few months, especially those early months, is a major red flag. For some context, I've been with my girlfriend for over a year. We talk every day and are very connected to each other's lives, and we never argued. There have been no unspoken truths or cold conversations between us and no passive aggressiveness. Nothing. We can disagree on a lot of things, but it never turns into an argument. You shouldn't be arguing in the first place, but if you are, it's probably not a good sign. How can you argue with someone you barely know? Story 22. I've lost many girlfriends over politics lately. It used to not even matter that much. Years ago, I dated women who didn't even know the difference between the political parties. Now I've lied to 2 girlfriends about who I voted for. Politics are destroying our country and they're trying to divide us. It's working. LA is about to lay off thousands of employees because they can't afford these protests. They're saying the employees are non-essential, but half the fire trucks didn't work during recent fires because these non-essential employees had already been laid off. I'll no longer date outside my political party. Story 23. When one partner rolls their eyes at something the other has done, it signals a lack of respect. The seemingly small gesture often reflects an absence of the patience, emotional bandwidth, and healthy communication necessary to sustain a meaningful partnership. If your partner laughs at you in a way that feels unexpected or hurtful, and you hesitate to bring it up for fear of being labeled overly sensitive or unable to take a joke, that's a red flag. It suggests an imbalance in emotional safety, which is an essential component of any healthy relationship. When a partner makes offhand, seemingly insignificant comments, whether flattering or critical, that feels strangely misplaced, it's often a sign that they hold unspoken opinions about you. These underlying thoughts, left unaddressed, can create a growing disconnect between how you believe they see you and how they actually do. Over time, that gap can become a major threat to the relationship's foundation. Story 24. My partner once said that I was habitually angry. I have epilepsy and it's not well managed yet because I was only recently diagnosed. I'm having a hard time coping with all the changes, and my seizures affect the area of the brain that controls speech and emotions. I never tried to put himself in my shoes. I also felt like I was never listened to, considered, or just dismissed. I've been working on myself, but he hasn't. I recently had to make a tough decision. Well, it was an easy decision, but hard to execute. I chose to move to another state with my daughter so she could spend more time with her dad. My partner refused to come with me, and I refused to choose a man over my daughter like my mother did. Recently, I started to miss him, but I recognize that it's a trauma bond. I spent 5.5 years with nothing to show for it. I hope to find myself again one day. I feel like I have no idea who I am, and it's so hard to keep going. I have so much more going on, and I feel like I'm drowning every second of every day and just want to give up. Story 25. The relationship starts to feel like a bottomless pit. No matter how much effort you put into things don't improve and you get less and less back every day. Alternatively, you realize that you can't problem solve for anything when you're together, even simple tasks that require nothing more than open communication. Relationships require work, but they also need to be functional. If basic compatibility keeps you from working together as a partnership, it's doomed. Story 26. I got dumped after a 9-year relationship about 6 weeks ago. Retrospectively, I somewhat knew something was wrong for about a year before the relationship ended, but I definitely didn't know that I knew at the time. Things I've recognized since the breakup include, he became more distant. I chalked this up to the challenges he was facing as he started a new and very difficult career. He stopped making sacrifices for me. He had to move away for 6 months for training for his new job and wouldn't come to see me on weekends because he was so busy. This made sense at the time, but now I realize that while he probably was busy, if he had been feeling the same way about a relationship as he used to, he would have made the time, at least sometimes. He needed a secondary reason to visit. The one time he did visit me, we spent much of the time with his friends. I remember thinking when he left that weekend that maybe he'd want to visit me more now that he realized he could see his friends too. It didn't occur to me that seeing me should have been reason enough to want to visit. He stopped saying I love you. I made the unhealthy decision to scroll back through our text messages and noticed that between September 21 and November 8, I said I love you via text 45 times, and he He only said it back 13 times, and he only said it first 7 times. Somehow I didn't notice this as a problematic sign at the time, even though it's so obviously a problem looking back. I started questioning whether I should tell him things. I didn't want to bring up things like having kids, when we'd buy our first dog, or successes I had experienced at work because I was worried that it would upset him or make him feel badly about himself. If you feel uncomfortable talking openly with your partner about issues you're facing or anything in your life, then that's a major problem. Our intimate life became less active, with both of us making excuses about being tired or stressed. This was even though we were newly long distance and didn't see each other as often and probably should have found it next to impossible to stay away from each other. I'm not sure what I could have done to be more aware of these things as they were happening. I obviously should have noticed, as these signs are so big, but when you're blinded by the hope that your love is enough to get you through, it's super easy to put on blinders. Just try to never take your relationship for granted and be honest with yourself. And hopefully you'll be able to notice these signs and work on the relationship together before it's too late. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 27. There's a quote I read a long time ago about how relationships that rely on the feeling of love rather than an actual dedication are doomed to fail. I personally found a lot of truth in that. All of my previous relationships ended when I realized that I was the only one dedicated to make things work. It also helps to remind myself of that little mantra when things get rough in my current relationship. What's more important? Winning an argument over something entirely insignificant or my partner's feelings? Is this a win for the relationship or a win for me? Specifically, my red flags were indifference. They stare at you blankly as you express your feelings of hurt. Even the possibility of breaking up doesn't seem to faze them. Extreme defensiveness. They never offer a real apology. It didn't matter how calmly or non-accusatorily I tried to bring up an issue or concern. It would get completely turned around and I was made to feel like a terrible person. Blame shifting. There was always some personality trait of mine that was actually causing all the issues, and it was something that I needed to apologize for and work on. I found myself saying things like, well, once X happens, things will get better, or if I just change Y about myself or my situation, he'll love me again like he used to. Of course, nothing ever made a difference. There are so many other very obvious cruelty and manipulative warning signs. Obvious now, with hindsight, but it all leads back to a general lack of commitment to the relationship. It's a truly awful feeling to watch the person you love fall out of love with you. It hurts so much that it feels easier to ignore it or wait for something to change, but all that does is prolong the inevitable. Sadly, there's no guaranteed immediate relief from a breakup. It can take months, sometimes even years. Eventually, though, it gets better. I grew so much by ending my previous relationship. I gained more self-respect, became a better communicator and a more reflective person, and I'm happier. I'm sure they are as well. Still have some ongoing baggage that haunts me sometimes, but I'm working on it. Story 28. They become non-committal on plans, especially those that involve reservations. The conversation seems less engaging than it used to be, as if you're just going through the motions of asking each other's day. Deep personal conversations become superficial or stay stuck in prolonged, unresolved conflict. They ask if you ever think about dating other people. This might seem obvious, but it's a major red flag that's easy to miss. Their 5-year plan changes vastly and seemingly out of the blue. Story 29. In my last relationship, neither of us had a car and we lived more than 50 minutes away from each other. We had a budget, so one of us could take an Uber to the other's house and back for the weekend. Whenever I questioned the inconvenient cost of the Uber, she would say, "It doesn't matter, it's worth spending that money just to see you." After about a month and a couple of fights and tough conversations, she changed her mind about taking an Uber to see me, saying, "It's not worth the money, I need to save." I knew the relationship was already rocky, but after hearing that, I knew there was no way of saving it. She's a very nice person, though. We just had different points of view on things. I still think about her all the time and hope she's doing well. Story 30. Silence is often a big red flag. When you and your partner start texting and calling each other less, it usually means your significant other has found someone new and exciting to talk to. Most of my exes just ghosted me instead of formally breaking up with me, so that's been my experience. People get bored. I don't know how others find someone to marry or stay in relationships for 2+ years. My relationships are usually passionate for a year and then just fade away. I guess this applies mostly to people in their early 20s. Maybe people who are older and wiser have longer lasting relationships. I really don't know how you all do it. Maybe if I had more money, they would last longer. This comment went from 0 to 100 really quickly. Story 31. You may know Dr. John Gottman as the guy who can predict divorce with over 90% accuracy. His life's work on marital stability and divorce prediction has been well documented in the media and was even featured in the bestseller Blank by Malcolm Gladwell. After watching thousands of couples argue in his lab, he identified specific negative communication patterns that predict divorce. He called them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse: criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Contempt is the most destructive of the 4 horsemen because it conveys the message, "I'm better than you, I don't respect you." It's so destructive, in fact, that couples who are contemptuous of each other are more likely to suffer from infectious illnesses than those who are not. The target of contempt is made to feel despised and worthless. Contempt can show up in many ways, such as treating others with disrespect, mocking them with sarcasm, using hostile humor or name-calling, mimicking or using body language like eye-rolling and sneering. When contempt starts to overwhelm a relationship, you tend to forget your partner's positive qualities, at least while you're upset. You can't remember a single positive quality or act. The immediate erosion of admiration is an important reason why contempt should be eliminated from a relationship. Contempt erodes the bond that holds a couple together. It's impossible to build a connection when your relationship is deprived of respect. Here's the good news. Dr. Gottman's ability to predict divorce is contingent on behavior is not changing over time. You can reverse a pattern of contempt in your relationship before it's too late. The antidote lies in building fondness and admiration. Dr. Gottman discovered that the best way to measure fondness and admiration is to ask couples about their past. Questions like, how did you meet, and what were your first impressions of each other, can reveal the strength of their underlying connection. Story 32. I used to date a guy who was struggling mentally and financially and was just pretty lonely. We got close and fell in love, but over the course of a few years, he wouldn't do anything to change his situation, so I helped. Got him out of debt, new clothes, and I encouraged and went with him to the gym, motivated him to work on a side project every day, and so on. And he got his life together. He was happier and more confident. He then dumped me. I always wonder why he ended things after I made so much effort to help him better himself. Did he get more confident and suddenly think it was too good for me? I don't know. Story 33. When you feel like the effort you're putting into the relationship outweighs the return, that's a clear sign that something is wrong. Your relationship should make you happy, not feel like a job or an obligation. There are some cases where two indifferent people can make it work because they each do just enough to keep the other content without being miserable. This isn't ideal for most people, but it can work. However, once you cross the line and feel like the relationship is draining your energy or freedom and happiness, that's a good sign that it's time to end it. Story 34. Resentment is a relationship ender. You know that one thing they did 6 months ago? They apologized and you moved on, but you never really got over it. You feel crazy for bringing it up again, so you don't. Instead of talking about your feelings, you let every little thing they do start to bother you, so you start working overtime or pick up time-consuming hobbies just to avoid them. The love is over, and the writing is on the wall, but you refuse to acknowledge it. Then you meet a new girl at work and start bonding over innocent stuff. For example, you like art and you see on her Instagram that she paints. Now you're talking to her about art. Not hitting on her, but you're fascinated by her work. You then realize you enjoy talking to her more than you like talking to your wife. Your wife never wants to talk about anything fun anymore. She just wants to talk about serious things and nag you about small stuff, like the way you do your laundry. Now she's getting upset because you're paying too much attention to this other girl. Even though nothing is going on, you start to feel guilty about showing another woman so much affection. You finally ask the new girl to watch a movie with you, and you find out she's in a committed relationship. Now you're going through a divorce, and that girl you thought was your second chance doesn't want to talk to you about art anymore because you made things weird. All of this happened because you resented that one thing your wife did that bothered you 6 months ago. Story 35. Before I start, there's no such thing as an early sign that a relationship is for sure coming to an end. However, there are many signs that it may not last or that it won't be a healthy relationship for everyone involved if it does. One of the very early signs is when you're focused on who they might be, if, insert infinite possible things, or how great they will be when they eventually grow out of, insert infinite possible habits. People are who they are, and it is extremely rare for that to change. How people behave and how they adapt to who they are so they can have healthier relationships is also pretty rare because it's the beginning of eventual real change. Unfortunately, even people who will eventually make big changes end up having to travel a road you are not willing to follow. This isn't because you won't love who they will become, but because the process of their growth will come with relationship-damaging moments that create habits that, you guessed it, require an environmental change to move past. This almost always means ending the current relationship. I'm sure there will be a bunch of people who downvote this because it offends their misguided internal illusions about what people are and how we grow in real life. There absolutely are exceptions to this general trend. However, it's pretty much like betting you're the one person who won't get run over if you sprint blindfolded through traffic. It can happen, but it's an extremely foolish assumption to make. It takes two very, very self-aware people who are both more concerned with the health of their relationship than with hanging on to their own ego or being right. These people either didn't have problems to begin with or they've already come a long way on their journey. That's my 2 cents. Story 36. I recently got out of a 5-year relationship. Here are 2 non-obvious signs that I missed. Gaps in regular communication. It could be something as simple as going 2 days without a text or a snap when you normally communicate every day. This might seem minor. They were busy, for example, but when it starts to happen regularly, it can mean they're talking to someone new or are no longer interested in talking to you. Things they should have an issue with are suddenly okay. For example, they go from saying, I guess you can go hang out with the guys, to, sure, it sounds fun. If you know it normally bothers them and they suddenly don't care, it's a sign that they don't feel the need to invest in you anymore. Both of these symptoms became noticeable 6 months before the breakup, but looking back, they were happening for closer to 18 months. As others have stated, relationships don't end when you start fighting all the time. They end when you should fight, but don't. Story 37. If your love language is physical touch and you're suddenly not getting any or it's steadily decreasing, that's a sign of a problem. I'm someone who needs physical touch. That doesn't have to be a lot. Anything from cuddling and kissing to a fleeting but purposeful graze of the elbow or lower back is enough. I found that my ex and I could still have fun conversations and watch movies together. We were basically still friends, but she went from being very touchy with me to almost avoiding getting close to me. Obviously, I don't think being in a relationship obligates someone to physical affection, but I don't think I'm the only person who gets what I mean. When I tried to bring it up and talk about why she seemed so distant, she didn't really know what to say. In the end, we slowly drifted apart because we just wanted different things from each other. We're still good friends, if anyone's wondering. Story 38. For me, a significant sign that a relationship is in trouble is when I no longer cry during a fight. I'm someone who gets emotional during big arguments because I care so much. I hate it, but I can't help it. My tears are a sign that I want the fight to end, no matter who started it, so we can be happy with each other again. In my previous relationships, I knew I was emotionally checking out when I stopped crying. I didn't care if we were in a fight or if either of us stayed mad. My fiancé and I rarely fight, but when we do, I still cry. He hates seeing me cry, but he also knows it's actually a good thing. Story 39. When intimacy became mentally painful and I cried during it because there was no longer any connection, that was a major red flag for me. We'd been fighting for months and I had put a tentative end to things, but we were still living together. That last time we were intimate, when there was no connection between us, was the final nail in the coffin. Nothing he said or did after that could fix it. Don't wait until the other person is done with a relationship to get therapy. Don't accuse someone of not trying to make it work when they've been trying for months and you've ignored it. And never open up your relationship to fix it unless it's something you both truly want. It will break you or your partner, and there will be no fixing it. Story 40. If you're here looking for random signs that tell you what to do in your life and they seem to point to ending your relationship, like, I've been hearing a lot of breakup songs. Could this be over? And you subconsciously want it to be over already. You're feeling unclear or think you don't have enough reason to, so you're looking for outside validation. If what you call signs lead to a reconsideration or give love another try, that means you should, because that's what your heart and mind want. If all the signs point to a breakup, then do it. Even if you cry at the thought of losing what you thought was the love of your life, your intuition knows, so listen to it. If you're here trying to assess if your relationship is over, it probably is. If you're here and sensing your relationship is over and that is eating you up inside, it isn't. Go find a post about how to fix a rough patch in a relationship, or better yet, stop looking to complete outsiders who have no idea how you or your partner feel about each other and be strong enough in your own feelings to either fix or end things. Story 41. Guilt. I had a lot of relationships before I met the one. Whenever a relationship was declining, I would feel guilty about numerous things, like meeting friends alone or being late. I've now been with my significant other for 6 years, and she almost never makes me feel guilty. We reflect a lot on our daily lives and can talk about anything. We almost never argue. Long story short, if both partners have the room to be happy without having to feel guilty, you're going to have a good time. Perhaps the most important lesson I've learned in my life is that you don't need a person to make you happy. Learn to be happy on your own. And in a relationship, focus on giving happiness rather than receiving it. If both partners do that, you've got a good thing. Story 42. The cute things stop. What you once found romantic becomes a reason for an eye roll, a groan, or is just annoying. Little quirks start to bug you. They show more interest in something else than what you're saying unless they truly multitask or have ADHD. Coping mechanisms shift. You go from talking to each other to reading, binge watching TV or social media. You feel obligated to reply to their texts, answer their calls, or spend time with them. You look forward to having the bed to yourself. There's an uptick in smoking or drinking on either side. You feel like you have to rationalize or make excuses for their behavior. You think that if it wasn't for the kids, you would have already left. You look for excuses to stay. The little things become big issues. Issues never seem to resolve and haunt every argument. Fighting becomes the norm. You feel like a paycheck and nothing more. There's a lack of commitment to simple things like going out or making plans. New interests push larger amounts of time between you. A friend's issue becomes consuming or take precedence over your relationship. You start asking for relationship advice. The blame game starts. You or your partner start pushing good friends away. Feels like you're doing all the work in the relationship. A healthy relationship is a two-way street that takes a lot of work to maintain. Time apart should not be needed, but should be done occasionally. Story 43. When you stop being stupid together, it's a sign of a problem. A bad day or a trip is normal, but if you don't look back and make fun of yourselves or you no longer do silly things together like dancing in the kitchen, then you probably can't be bothered or no longer feel comfortable enough to make a fool of yourself in front of them. If you can't comfortably humiliate yourself in front of your significant other, then you're probably no longer comfortable with them. Also, in my opinion, if you're in a group of people and your partner makes a joke that's the funniest thing you've ever heard but no one else gets it, then your relationship is pretty stable. Story 44. I was with a great guy for 2 years. While getting to know him, I would ask him questions about where he was going in life and what he wanted in a partner. Normal conversations for a relationship that's over 6 months old. He would say he had never thought about it and didn't know. If I brought up anything remotely serious, he would change the subject, talk about his cat, fall asleep, or send me a meme. What made me realize I should break up with him was that we were worlds apart emotionally and that in the end, he just wanted a companion so he wouldn't be lonely. He never opened up the way a partner should, in or out of bed. Unless he crawled out of the depths like Cthulhu. I had to dump him. It was like dating a void. Story 45. I don't know if this is a non-obvious sign, but it didn't fully occur to me until long after it happened in my marriage. Can you stop caring whether the other person is happy? This might seem obvious, but it's less so when you translate it to everyday situations. For example, if your partner needs to be verbally complimented, you make the effort to do that even when it's not an obvious time for it. If your partner cares about keeping a super clean home, do you make the effort to maintain their desired level of cleanliness? If your partner craves quality time together, do you make time for it in your schedule at the expense of other things you want to do? There are thousands of examples. If you truly care for your partner, these are things you either actively want to do or care enough about the person and the relationship to do, even if it's not your natural reaction. Based on my limited experience and many conversations with friends, I think it's really difficult to come back from that tipping point. If you lack even the basic amount of care it takes to want to make your partner happier, your capacity to do the small things that maintain a healthy relationship is low. This makes the larger issues that will be encountered over time almost impossible to overcome. If you find yourself saying a version of, whatever, I just don't care enough to do that, or that's dumb, in response to relatively low-cost things that you would know would make your partner happy, it may be time to rethink things. Story 46. My wife and I had a baby, and she decided I needed to sleep in another room because my snoring was loud, which was fine. At one point, she stopped wearing the engagement ring I gave her so she wouldn't hurt the baby. Her mother lived with us, and if I suggested that she watch the baby for just a few hours so we could have a date night, she always said no. Once, I bought tickets to a concert and ended up going by myself. Every time I suggested we take our baby to visit my family who lived in town, she had an excuse as to why she didn't feel like going. I was never allowed to take our daughter anywhere by myself, which made me feel like she didn't trust me to keep our baby safe. My family saw our daughter once in the hospital, the day after she was born, and one more time 9 months later for a few hours. Her mother accompanied me to my family's house but stayed in the car the whole time. That was the day before we moved out of state. I had a horrible gut feeling when we were getting ready to move that as soon as we got to our new home, the relationship would be over. Sure enough, we moved, and one day we started to argue, and she just blurted out that she didn't want to be with me anymore. I moved out into my own place in a state that I can't stand to be in, but I'll do anything to see my daughter. I saw it coming to an end before we moved, but I tried everything on my end to keep us together. I figured it's always rough after you have a child. Everything was great, even shortly after we had the baby, but I guess people just change sometimes. Story 47. When you subconsciously feel insecure about opening up to your partner, it's a major red flag. This happens when you feel they either won't care or it will lead to an argument. This habit of cocooning yourself in a relationship is a sign that things are headed toward darkness. By this point, your mind is getting obvious signs that the relationship is in trouble, but your heart keeps believing to protect itself from breaking. Another major sign is when you don't feel the urge to keep them updated about your daily life or any significant matters because you know they will somehow make them insignificant. Hopefully, you can recognize these early signs and take action before they take a toll on your relationship. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.